Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for April 9th, 2019. Madam Clerk.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 54956.9, 2 cases.
Any public comment? Seeing none.
Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 1 case pursuant to Government Code section 54956.9 D2.
Any public comment? Seeing none. Next item.
Item 3, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code section 54957.6, County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Sheriff's Management Unit.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none.
Item 4, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code section 54957.6, closed session with County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none.
And number 5, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code section 54957.6, closed session with County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Deputy Sheriff's Association.
Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session. Recess to whatever we're doing. Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for April 9th, 2019. If you would please join me by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance if you can. Supervisor Stopper, please lead us.
Thank you, Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I just want to make a quick announcement. There's overflow seating next door in the old courtroom, and it's a closed circuit television, so you can, if we don't have room, and the back row, we like to reserve as much as possible for staff as they come in and out to report to the board. So, Madam Clerk, do you want to report out on, just a second? You know, we're going to move on to, we're going to report out on closed session now. Way to go. Madam Clerk.
Item 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, 2 cases pursuant to Government Code section 54956.9 D4. Case 1, on a motion by Supervisor Mills and a second by Supervisor Stopper, the board voted unanimously to approve county counsel to represent the county in the matter of PG&E Corporation and Pacific Gas and Electric Company, United States Bankruptcy Court for the Northern District of California, case number 19-30088, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy in which Calaveras County is a creditor. And the board approved and directed staff to execute a retainer agreement with Michael K. Slattery of Lamb and Kawakami, LLP, to jointly represent Calaveras and other counties in this matter. Case 2, on a motion by Supervisor Mills and a second by Supervisor Toffanelli, the board voted unanimously to ratify the filing of civil action number 19-CV-2421 in United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, naming members of the Sackler family and Rhodes Pharmaceuticals as defendants in an action to be consolidated with existing litigation against opioid manufacturers and distributors pending in federal court. Item 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 1 case, pursuant to Government Code section 54956.9D2, there was no reportable action taken. Item 3, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Sheriff's Management Unit. There was no reportable action taken. Item 4, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association. There was no reportable action taken. And lastly, number 5, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, closed session with County Designated Labor Negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding employee organization, Calaveras County Deputy Sheriff's Association. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you very much. For those of you standing in the back, there's 3 or 4 chairs over here. There's a couple over there. Everybody be friendly and let everybody find a chair. And there continues to be overflow seating next door. We'll go on to announcements. Are there any announcements from the board? Supervisor Mills.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair. We had Sandy Rainey with the Northern California Power Authority reach out as a result of our meeting with the fire cameras last week and offer all of their available sites for our use or for the use in getting those cameras up. And I want to thank Randy Bowersox, who's their project manager at Murphy's, and Sandy for taking a lead role here and providing those facilities to us. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Stopper.
May 4th, the fishing game, the County Fishing Game Commission is going to be putting on the Kids Fishing Day at Murphy's Park. This coming up again May 4th, and we would like anybody that has their kids or anybody that wants to go up and see what it's all about, please go up to Murphy's Park and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, Madam Tax Collector, Treasurer Tax Collector.
Yes, good morning, Barbara Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector, doing my public announcement. The taxes for the second installment are due by tomorrow by 5 p.m. So people have a day to get it in the mail, postmark it, or do it online payments now, which is awesome. So just wanted to give a friendly reminder for that, because I know everybody loves me.
Tax day. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Other staff? Very well. We will move on to recognition and acknowledgements.
Item 6 is from the library to adopt a proclamation recognizing the week of April 7th through 13th, 2019 as National Library Week in Calaveras County.
Supervisor Toffenel.
Yes, thank you. And I have the pleasure and honor of reading this proclamation that's in front of us. Nancy? I see the librarians here. It's a proclamation recognizing the week of April 7th through 13th, 2019 as a National Library Week in Calaveras County. Whereas today's libraries are not just about books and materials, but about what libraries do for and with people. All right, Nancy, what are we doing with people? Whereas libraries of all kinds are at the heart of the cities, towns, schools, and campuses across America. Whereas libraries have long served as trusted and valued institutions where everyone in the community is welcome and people of all backgrounds come together and connect. Whereas libraries and librarians offer services, programs, and expertise which build strong communities. Whereas libraries promote a free exchange of information and ideas which are cornerstones of our democracy. And whereas libraries promote civic engagement by being a source of information and awareness about community events and issues. Excuse me. And whereas libraries and library workers partner with other civic organizations to help meet community needs. And whereas libraries and librarians empower their communities to make informed decisions by providing free access to accurate information. And whereas libraries are a resource for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status, by offering services and educational resources that transform lives and strengthen communities. And whereas libraries, librarians, library workers, and supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week. Nancy, you have something you would like to say?
Nancy Giddens, Calaveras County Librarian. As you heard, the theme for National Library Week this year is Libraries Equal Strong Communities. And it's been a privilege for me for the past 3 years to lead the Calaveras library system, and especially this year, as we strive to make our libraries and our communities strong. I have appreciated the support of the community, county government, and the Board of Supervisors as they give us the ability to improve the quality of life for our citizens. I believe that the scope and impact of our efforts of how we make communities strong are best understood by our numbers. In our 17-18 report to the California State Library, we saw that over 24,000 of our citizens are registered library users. 5,200 of those are children. We were able to offer in-person service to our community for more than 10,000 hours in all of our 8 locations around the county. We had 64,000 visits. We circulated 143,000 items. So those who say books are no longer relevant to us can see that they are relevant to our citizens. That includes just 10,000 digital items, so 133,000 of those are physical items. Through our wonderful Link Plus interlibrary loan program, we circulated 4,600 items. The previous year, when our patrons were paying $3.50 per item, we circulated 325. That's a 14 times increase. Giving our community access to the 65 library systems and 11 million items that are available for through Link Plus make our community stronger. The numbers that make me happiest, though, are the numbers of people attending programming at the library. We saw an increase from 4,600 in 16-17 to almost 12,400 in 17-18. People coming to the library to learn and grow. Nearly 10,000 of these 12,000 are children who are participating in library literacy in West Point, preschool programs in 7 locations each week, STEAM Pioneers each Wednesday in San Andreas, art and science experiences in Mokelumne Hill, and much more. Our children and families' lives are enriched through our library system. And let's not forget our computers. Nearly 25,000 people used our computers and Wi-Fi in 17-18. The addition of broadband in 5 locations greatly improves our service to Calaveras County. Our literacy division served 103 students for over 3,100 hours of instruction during that fiscal year. And none of this, of course, would be possible without staff and volunteers. Calaveras County, Friends of the Library, the State Library, and First 5 are currently funding all of our staff positions. Our dream is to not only retain current staff, but to increase staff so that we can serve our children and young adults better. Ideas can only be implemented by people. Building strong communities takes time, effort, and commitment, and the library is ready to do its part. Working together, I believe our library can do great things for Calaveras County, making it stronger and better.
Thank you very much. Any board comments before we move to public comment? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people got a lot of nice things to say about our libraries.
Nancy, I'm going to look at you because you've been a driving force in essence, coalescing a lot of the activity that's gone on here in the last 2 to 3, 4 years. So I think that you and the staff that surround you and all of the volunteers, whether they're in Copperopolis or West Point, doesn't make any difference, have one single purpose in mind. And I just want to be able to thank each one of them for their individual efforts that they've done on behalf of the children and the services that are provided here in our county through the library system. Thank you.
Supervisor Stopper.
I also want to thank you. You haven't just taken strides forward, you've taken leaps. I can remember back when I was in 6th grade, going up to Sally Tuttle's house to do reading with her, and she's been solidly involved way back then, and it's, the library system's been revived. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment. Let me make a quick announcement. If you've got an empty seat next to you, raise your hand so people in the back can grab a seat. And I can't have everybody standing in the back unless you're up to speak. So we do have overflow next door as well. But we'll start with public speakers. And the seat's not vacant if somebody just got up to talk. So please.
Hi, I'm Connie Bowser from Angels Camp, and as you can tell, I really did want to say something about the library. I have been on the Library Commission for a long time, when Maury was here and at the beginning with Nancy. And it has been such a privilege to work with Nancy and all of the volunteers that have created so many new programs in our library. And it is becoming one of the stars in our county. It's a wonderful library, a wonderful system. Our Board of Commissioners is going to take a trip to every library this Friday, or next Friday, anyway, and visit each one so that we are really that much more informed about what's going on. So we really do appreciate Nancy and our library and the volunteers. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next speaker from the library.
Hello. My name's Richard Verasso, and I'm a lovable worldwide rock star and film liaison. I live in Copperopolis, and I've been involved in this county since I was 14 years old. That's a long time ago. And I became interested in politics around the controversy that my supervisor, Dennis Mills, has, and I started to look at things in politics. And I come here with a matter of an emergency, in my opinion.
Excuse me, sir. Is this about the library recognition today? That we're
No,
talking
this is a public speaking.
No, sir, that's coming up next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Certainly. Is there another speaker who would like to speak about the library recognition? Marty.
Good morning, Marty Crane, District 5. Also director of the Calaveras Volunteer Center, so my focus is always on kudos to our volunteers, and our entire library system is built on volunteers, as so much of our community is. And I wanted to make sure that we all remember that when Maury was here for many, many years, she stood here and gave us a really long history of her time in here, which included goats running through the library, and then, of course, when our Dirty Book Club, all the fun things and all the foundation that was laid when she was here that has allowed us to now welcome Nancy and all the amazing things that she and the team, but the volunteer team has brought to us. So we all build on what other people have done, and I suspect we will continue to build, and kudos to Nancy and the team. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to hold applause. Everybody's welcome to do happy hands, but we don't do that in here. Other speakers regarding the library? Seeing none. Al? Is there other speakers? Al, you'll be our last speaker on this item.
I
You
thought
get
I
the
was,
final word.
I thought I was number 5. It turned out I'm next. That's pretty good. I'd like to join the others in saying a big thank you to Nancy and the things that she's accomplished with the library. Nancy was a guest on our Taxpayer Alert public access TV program not too long ago, and she, in a half hour, she laid out some pretty awesome things that they're doing. And she didn't have time to talk about all that here, but if someone would want to get more information about what she's been doing with the library system, they need to go to YouTube, Calaveras Taxpayers Alert, and then her name, and you'll get a really interesting show. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. All right, I'll bring us back to the board. Further discussion or motion? A motion, not emotion.
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenelli.
As someone who has office hours at the library in Arnold, which was built by volunteers, the same as the one in Murphy's. Oh, that's a long way of saying I'm seconding the motion.
Second by Supervisor Callaway. I'll call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
And before I finish reading the proclamation, I would like to just say thank you, Nancy. I've been on the Valley Springs Friends of the Library Board for many years, and you were a breath of fresh air when you showed up and came. Not to take anything away from Maury. She did a wonderful job, but I want to thank you personally for your work that you do and your staff. So let me finish reading. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors that April 7th through 13th, 2019 is National Library Week in Calaveras County. We encourage all residents to visit the library this week, explore what's new, and engage with library staff and volunteers. The library is supported by our county to expand your world and transform our communities. We affirm that libraries equal strong communities.
Thank you very much.
Any of the library volunteers want to come up and be included in the picture? Yeah?
Come on, library volunteers. Hey, Star. Hey, Star. Good to see you.
There we go. Scoot in like you like each other, yeah. There you go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. One more time. Okay.
All right, now one with the supervisor's photo ball. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, public comment.
General public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Thank you. We'll do 30 minutes. Again, if there's extra comments, they could go over to the end of the meeting. If you're here to address any of the items on the agenda, those will come up later. So these are for items off the agenda. So no libraries, hemp, Butte Fire, that's all next. Sir, would you like to begin?
Thank you, and sorry for speaking out of turn. And I must say that I use the Copperopolis Library. My children do all the time. It's a nice little branch. Again, my name is Richard Verasso, and I live in Copperopolis. I broadcast a radio show out of there called Copperopolis.rocks. And I've been around since I was 14, became interested in politics recently. And so I have been digging into the county, and I think I have a lot to offer, and I would like to be able to help in some way. So I feel that there's a matter of emergency in a timeliness fashion, and that is that the Visitors Bureau here is hiring an executive director. And unfortunately, I think the emergency is that there's unfair hiring practice there. And I think the position should be sent to the most qualified person. It's a very important position because it's bringing visitors in. It also helps with revenue caused by filming and permits and stuff like that, which I have a lot of knowledge base on. So I feel the position should be given to the most qualified person. Unfortunately, I was turned down with a form letter, and I have so much to offer that some of the public people around here say that the position might have been promised already, which I think would be a travesty. I'm not sure if the Visitors Bureau was ever audited according to bylaws or whatnot, but I think that the Board of Supervisors should practice due diligence in that, and also keep an eye on the hiring process down at the Visitors Bureau, because it should go to the most qualified person, and it's a very important position. So I just would like for you guys to pay attention to the Visitors Bureau hiring right now, and I remain available. I did apply, but I was turned down, so I wanted you all to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if we could stick to 5 standing in the back, great. Stacy, you're up.
Good morning. Stacy Johnston, Calaveras County Chamber of Commerce. I am here to speak about our exciting event that the Chamber created in 2017, On the Right Track. We just held our 2nd annual event at Bret Harte High School yesterday, and we're able to work with about 150 students. Actually, Miss Diane, can I have this? Information about it. So On the Right Track is a program that we designed to engage our students on a very interactive event. We exposed them to life-like scenarios. We engaged, yesterday we had about 30 organizations that were on the track at Bret Harte High School, county services, healthcare. We had CHP, Sheriff's Department, we have financial advisors, you name it, we try to engage them. And we walk students through life-like scenarios as realistically as we can. And students have to engage these organizations as if they were needing their services. And what we found is that while we're preparing students for college or careers, we're forgetting some of the basic skills that they're going to need. When my daughter went to school in Texas, she called me one day and said, "Mom, I need a certified copy of my birth certificate," and she thought it was the one that I had in her baby book. And it was just, this light went off, and I thought, ooh, I've never even thought to teach her these things. So we provide opportunities now for our seniors, just such as that. Each student gets a binder with them that are filled with resources of every organization that is in attendance of that day. So these binders are now in the homes of every student here in Calaveras County, graduating senior actually. So parents can now turn to these binders for resources and information. So I invite you to attend our next event. It's at Calaveras High School, April 26th, Friday from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. We get such great support. Taco Bell donates lunch for all the seniors and volunteers. We have a local bakery that provides cookies and treats, donates water. Please, please, please set that on your calendar. We would love for you to come and check out a great program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Hey, happy hands. I know, it's a new day.
How you guys doing? I watch these meetings from home, been watching them for years. I see a lot of waste of money, see a lot of possible corruption in the county. I'm not really here to talk about that today. There's plenty of people here to talk about what they want to talk about today. But my main issue right now is with the camera team, because with these problems going on with the county, the least that we could ask for is documentation of this. The least that we could ask for is the actual videos, the actual minutes, the actual summaries from these meetings. The last meeting, the March 26th meeting, is missing the entire consent agenda from your guys' webpage and from YouTube. The one item that was pulled is on there, but about 20 items are missing from the consent agenda on the last webpage video, the YouTube video. All the summary and minutes of what you guys decided for each one of those agenda, is all missing. And also regular agenda item number 23 is missing, which was Mark Bulger wanting to rezone his property. And it's funny because poor Jeb over there had to fight tooth and nail to try to get his property rezoned and still couldn't get it done. But Mark Bulger seemed to probably just strut in here and get his pot crop rezoned no problem by you guys. Just kind of seems odd you guys get to pick and choose. Who's got that golden ticket? Looks like there's plenty of people in here to represent us today. I wish this meeting looked like this every time in here, because there's millions of dollars getting wasted by these people each year that could be going to a lot of better things. I don't need all my time. I just need documentation, and I would like for the March 26th meeting to actually put up, I called and talked to these guys. They said there was no problem with the video.
Can you address the board, sir?
I called and talked to the YouTube, or to the people making these videos, and they said there was no problem with the video. So I'd just like to know when we're going to get to see it. And this is a major problem, especially when Mills and other people are trying to make it so that the consent agenda can't even be commented on. So we could possibly, if they had their way, we'd have a consent agenda that we can't comment on, we can't pull items from, and we'd have the camera crew hiding it from the rest of us. So, I mean, if you guys just want to go in back doors and make all the decisions for us, like I know most of them are being made, just go do it. You know what I mean? But the camera crew especially, I don't understand. I mean, I talked to them, communicated with them. It's been 2 weeks since that meeting. They don't care. They don't seem to care. So just documentation of this corruption I'd like to see. So one day, if possibly justice is done and trials are actually held, we can have proof of what was going on in here.
Thank you. Next speaker. Come on. Terry?
Good morning, Terry McBride, District 2. The reason I'm speaking now is that I and several others went to the California Office of Plan and Research Commission on Catastrophic Wildfire Cost and Recovery meeting in Santa Rosa last Wednesday. I will tell you, it was I'm glad we drove up there. The commission is asking for input for everyone that's been affected by the wildfires in the respect as to PG&E and what many of us who haven't seen a dime are going through. And also folks that are complaining with good cause about how their insurance rates are going way sky high or being canceled outright. They had a group of folks representing the insurance industry, and it just so happens that one of our past insurance commissioners, California's, was sitting on the board, and he wasn't having any of what they were trying to give him. So this is really, it seems to be an organization or a commission that actually cares about the people of California for once. That's a good one. And they are asking folks to send comments, hopefully by April 22nd. They'll have a meeting on April 29th. You can just go on, good old Google and look up California Office of Planning and Research, Commission on Catastrophic Wildfire Cost and Recovery, because it's the squeaky wheel that gets greased. And if enough of us speak up from all walks of life, then positive changes happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Hal, yep. Money.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I'd like to piggyback a little bit on the youth outreach that's going on. We really agree with it. I think Calaveras High is the next one, and the Association of Realtors, and I think the Chamber will be, in addition to having the information that was mentioned, will be able to provide copies of the Constitution to kids, which is the point of my talk now. This little booklet called the U.S. Constitution and Fascinating Facts About It is probably the most powerful little and interesting little booklet that you could read. I provided copies to a previous Board of Supervisors. There may be two that have not received it, and if you do not already have it, I have one for you. Let me talk a little bit about it. The U.S. Constitution and Fascinating Facts About It. You'll see the entire text of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and much more. You'll find interesting insights into the men who wrote the Constitution, how it was created, and how the Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution in the last 2 centuries since its creation. For instance, did you know which famous American refused to go to the Constitutional Convention because he smelled a rat? That was Patrick Henry, by the way. Which Supreme Court justice said of obscenity, "I know it when I see it"? That was Justice Porter Stewart. Which Supreme Court justice is also in the College Football Hall of Fame? And that's Justice Byron Whizzer White. Which 2 founding fathers both died on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence? I think a lot of people know that one. That's Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, who died on July 4th, 1826. Why America had a king instead of a president? Why America almost had a king instead of a president? Alexander Hamilton led a group of politicians who offered the American monarchy to Prince Henry of Prussia, but changed their minds before he responded. There's so much interesting information in here. There's also a listing of the major Supreme Court decisions. We all know about Roe versus Wade, but there's a lot more than that. And they're all listed here, and this is like a handbook, and has been a handbook for attorneys that would want to have reference for their protecting their clients. In any case, anything that could be done to help promote this Constitution, to get it to kids, we have 100 copies, and we would love you to help us. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue petitioning our government with grievances. Sir, you're up next. That'd be the First Amendment.
Yes, good morning. I'm Steve Russell, Supervisor, Staff, Council, and I'm pleased here today to announce the resurrection of the old Country Haven facility over on Toyin Drive. For many years it served as assisted care facility, was closed down. Just a little bit more than a year ago, was vacant and whatever, and I put a group together along with some help to open that facility once again. We're back in operation, paying taxes, providing jobs, and serving our disadvantaged here in the community. So I'll be up here regularly to continue to do this type of work, and just wanted everybody to know that. So any questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you very much. So you can see us, you'll be seeing us, our new signs and whatever. So it's a wonderful place to be, and I enjoy being here. So thank you.
Thanks, sir. Bonnie?
Thank you. Good morning. I don't know if you all had a chance to read the Stockton Record last week, but on the front page, very front page, it says, Coroner's Office honored for organ donation efforts. Apparently, in San Joaquin County, they're honoring organizations that are promoting and recognizing organ donations. We know the state of California sanctions organ donations by virtue of the driver's license that we have issued that has a place where we can check a box if we are interested in donating organs. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because The IHSS Advisory Committee wanted to include an article about organ donations in their last newsletter, and we were not sanctioned. In fact, we were censored. So I would like to read you that article that the Department of Social Services or the public authority thought was so insulting or rude or out of line. Organ donation. One person has the potential to save 8 lives through heart, kidney, liver, pancreas, lung, and small intestine donations. A donor can also help heal more than 50 others by donating skin tissue for burn victims, veins for people with chronic pain, tendons for athletes, or corneas for the visually impaired. Today, about 115,000 patients are waiting for a life-saving transplant. To be eligible to donate, a person has to be in the hospital, on a ventilator, and declared brain dead. This happens in only 1% of all deaths in the U.S. Seniors, newborns, people with bad eyesight, cancer survivors, and even those with diabetes and hepatitis can be organ donors. There is pain in losing a loved one, but comfort in knowing that an organ donation can help others and save lives. What do you think is so outrageous in that 1-inch article that we could not put it in our newsletter? I say nothing. We find ourselves censored, we find ourselves handicapped, we find ourselves with the rugs pulled out from under us. Every time the IHSS Advisory Committee tries to move forward, create comment, create new discussion, and I just want you to be aware that we think we're right. We're adults. We know what's right and wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Sandy? Seeing nobody else standing up there, Neil, how many more speakers do we have? All right, we'll run till we run out of time. Sandy?
Okay, just a brief comment that I'd like to make. There was a absolutely wonderful event that was held on Sunday at the Mountain Ranch Youth Alliance, and it was called Empty Bowls, and it was an amazing fundraiser. There was handmade lovely bowls to be bought for $10 along with lunch. There was a silent auction. It was extremely well attended and nicely done by the Mountain Ranch Youth Alliance and that team. Allison, kudos to your folks. But I wanted to particularly thank Supervisor Callaway for coming up the hill, spending time with us in Mountain Ranch, and for participating in that event. So thank you.
And spending money.
That too.
Always appreciated. Next up, Neil?
Good morning. 32% of owner-occupied housing and 52% of renters defined as low, very low, or extremely low income households are all overpaying for housing in the county. Projections for the next 9 years for manufactured mobile homes and accessory dwelling units meet only 65% of HUD's regional housing allotment for the 3 lowest income levels. This county is experiencing an affordable housing crisis and will be for at least the next 9 years. Worst of all, manufactured housing is not an answer to affordable housing. Manufactured/mobile homes are not considered permanent dwellings. These are the only type of dwellings that are guaranteed to depreciate. Their classification also allows for predatory lending practices that charge interest rates of up to 15%. This is one of the largest reasons owners and renters are overpaying for housing. Clayton Homes is the largest manufacturer of mobile homes, and it is owned by Warren Buffett. They made a combined pre-tax gross revenue in 2018 of $911 million from sales and predatory lending. 1 in 18 Americans lives in a mobile home. 1/3 of those citizens don't own the land their mobile homes are placed on. The Carlyle Group, which has over $216 billion in assets, has been implementing a strategy that involves purchasing mobile home parks and raising rents to unaffordable levels or simply evicting mobile home owners across the country. The depreciation of mobile homes combined with the ruthless practices of private equity firms that prey on an owner's inability to affordably move a mobile home should be reason enough not to consider these types of dwellings as an affordable housing option for lower-income households. The Planning Department's presentation on the housing element provided evidence that the largest developer in the county has not provided a single affordable housing unit for lower-income households. Castle and Cook recently sold all their assets in Copperopolis without completing the community projects they were expected to complete. The sewer system they built was woefully inadequate, for instance. Now that they have sold out to a multitude of corporate shell companies, we can probably count on these new developers to fix and build all the improvements that Castle and Cook failed to complete. The original Castle and Cook development plans for the Copper Valley have been repeatedly rubber-stamped without any regard for the public projects they failed to build. We can no longer simply hope they will do what they have promised to complete. Development fees, if implemented, would ensure the completion of projects that mitigate the impacts suburban development costs us throughout the county. Developers must be held accountable for all the negative impacts that are silently poisoning our rural quality of life. And they can't be trusted. Please do not rubber stamp the Copper Valley development plans without instituting the in lieu development fees that can mitigate the countywide impacts of developments
Thank you
such
very
as
much,
these.
Stop. Mike?
Mike Falvey, District 2, referencing closed session agenda item number 1. Obviously, it was a closed session, so no telling exactly what went on, what was discussed, but I believe it was litigation, national litigation involving pharmaceutical companies, correct me if I'm wrong, including the Sacklers, who are poisoning America and getting the backing of a lot of our governmental agencies. I remember it was previous board, not all you folks, but this came up about the opioid crisis between a year and 2 years ago. And I know I made public comment at the time. It's about time we start holding these people responsible. You know, as much effort as this board has put into cannabis, for instance, and the regulating or banning of it, why are they letting opioids being shoved down our citizens' throats? And why are they backing these industries? I know I stated publicly that it's time we hold some of these pharmaceutical companies accountable, and it's time we cut our ties with them. You guys are busy. I realize that. You got a lot on your plate. Here's an idea. Get a hold of our public health officer, who I guess he's an appointed position. Tell him to determine who is poisoning the citizens of Calaveras County and have him cut ties, because I know Calaveras County has some kind of pharmaceutical program for whoever it is, the employees, whoever. But to allow the Sacklers to poison, for instance, that's just one, and McKesson, I think, is another one. Correct me if I'm wrong. But to allow this to go on is criminal to me. You spend all this time banning one product, but you allow major pharma to run roughshod over the citizens of the United States. So please appoint our county health officer to research who is poisoning the citizens of this county and to cut all ties with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I'm Tyler Childress from District 2. I just had a few comments regarding the allocation of the Butte Fire settlement funds.
Mr. Childress, this is not for the Butte Fire.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You'll get a chance to talk.
It's later in this.
Yes, sir.
agenda, I'm sorry.
No worries. Next speaker. This is our last speaker. We will continue public comment at the end of the meeting. No, we're at 30 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Randall Bach. I'd like to say a few words regarding cannabis in Calaveras. I live on Higdon Road near West Point. Our family roots in Calaveras go back to the 1800s. We are proud to call Calaveras our home. I was introduced to the benefits of medical cannabis about 10 years ago with the recommendation of local doctors that began looking into the possibility of using cannabis to relieve chronic pain. As a result of that search, I learned of the medical properties of cannabidiol, or CBD as it is now commonly known. I'm sure some of you may have heard of CBD by now. With the help of friends and two very talented science and health advocates, we have developed a CBD-based medical salve. This salve has sparked a growing interest in our CBD products across the country and internationally. We have accumulated testimonials and documented the success of this salve for many individuals for a variety of ailments. I would like to propose a new beginning to a viable cannabis industry in Calaveras. I have consulted with a few people that have new ideas to make this industry a success. I think we should start small with a model group that we can learn from and transition to a future viable industry for Calaveras and all its residents. County certification of our cannabis will reward legal growers with eventual interstate commerce and banking once federally approved. Black market operators will not have that advantage. Lack of distribution will cause it to decline. This will assist law enforcement with their overwhelming task of illegal operations. An initial model group of growers would help fine-tune an ordinance for the next applicants to follow. Controlled growth of this new industry would enable Calaveras to benefit economically without the risk of losing control. I have ideas I would like to share with the county. I'm willing to work to make this a success for cannabis entrepreneurs, Calaveras County, and all its residents. Thank you.
We have time for one more, and we're at 30 minutes.
Will there be time after, too, for people?
There's time after the meeting to
Okay.
continue speaking.
I wanted to follow up on what Mr. Falvey said about the Sacklers. In addition to overprescribing and seeing to it that doctors overprescribe by giving them incentives and junkets and whatnot, there is a financial incentive in doctors overprescribing. But also, they had a concerted effort to demonize people that become addicted to their products. And they also are cashing in on alternative drugs for the patients. So I think that the issue goes much further than opiates to many of the other toxic prescription medications and to a toxic corporate environment that enables, almost promotes addiction, but then demonizes the poor people that have legitimate medical need for pain abatement, but don't have good alternatives. So I do think that it's really crucial for the county leadership to study the issue of alternatives being plant-based. We need to focus on harm reduction, and we need to do more in the county discourse to stop demonizing, always looking for trouble with people that are trying to come up with solutions to major health crises in our country. I spend so much time hearing people call me a drug pusher because I grew cannabis for friends that were terminally ill. I see a tremendous amount of canophobia going on throughout the county, where people want to automatically assume that we're out to game the system or we're just in it for the money. Frankly, I have donated more cannabis than I've profited on. It's a break-even scenario often for us. And also to suggest that we don't care about the land. I can't tell you how many hours I have spent defending the forest, fighting against nuclear weapons and nuclear proliferation throughout the country, working on peace and nonviolence and social issues. It's a shame that we can't come together as a community and work towards solving problems instead of just labeling each other as drug pushers or profiteers or things like that. So please consider a more just and reasonable policy across the county. Thank you.
Thank you. That will conclude public comment for the day. We will continue this at the end of the meeting. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
All right, is there any board members who'd like to pull an item? Supervisor Mills?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to pull item 9 and reset it for April 23rd.
All right, we'll pull that and we'll have a motion on that.
Okay, and then the other one would be item 20.
Item 20. And staff want to pull an item? Seeing none? Public? All right.
What'd she say?
Bonnie pulled item number 7. 27. IHSS schedule.
Thank you.
Very well. We'll come back. Supervisor Mills, item 9. Oh, I'm sorry, where did I go? Thank you. We have a motion on the balance of the consent agenda, please.
I'll move.
Moved by Supervisor Toffenelli,
I'll second.
second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much for catching that, Madam Clerk. Supervisor Mills, number 9.
Item 9 from the Elections Department to appoint the appointment of applicants to 3-cent flat Community Services District pursuant to Government Code Section 1780.
Supervisor Mills?
Yes, I would just like to have, as a supervisor, you are the supervisor for that area, to have a closer look at this before a decision is brought forward to the board.
Okay, do you want to set it to a specific date?
The specific date would be the meeting of April 23rd.
April 23rd. Thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Mills?
I will make a motion to
You make a motion?
reset it.
Is there a second? We'll do public comment.
Yeah.
We got a second on that. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Toffenelli. Public comment on that item. Seeing none, bring it back for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, next one is
Item 20.
20.
This item is from Integrated Waste Management to direct the purchasing agent to issue a blanket purchase order for Hunt and Sons in an amount not to exceed $100,000 for fiscal year 2018-19.
Supervisor Mills.
Yes, I'm sure that Mr. Moss is here regarding waste management. The question has to do with how did we get $100,000 askew of our budgeted item. We're now 3 months to the end of the year and needing $100,000 more than we had anticipated to meet that goal at the end of the year. How did we get that far afield?
Mr. Moss.
Good morning, Brian Moss, Integrated Waste Administrative Office, and thank you for the question. Actually, we are just in excess of 50,000 right now. The 100,000 actually is a buffer that for any reason we are going to hit that number. I really don't see it, but the reality is it's actually a buffer. There's no general fund cost. What I can tell you is that historically, Integrated Waste Management purchased its fuel under the blanket of Public Works. So whether it be road yard, integrated waste, et cetera, all was done under Public Works, which has worked for many years. We realized, reviewing our books recently, that we were just in excess of $50,000. That takes board approval. Now, it's not that we're so much out of skew with the budget. It's a matter of the fact that really we are exceeding that amount for this fiscal year. Again, I don't anticipate actually spending $100,000 for the entire year. I think we'll probably end up somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $65,000 or $70,000. The fuel that we're purchasing is for Rock Creek operations. It's both diesel and unleaded. Depending on our vehicles, we use red diesel for our large equipment that stays on the landfill. We use the unleaded for our vehicles that are on the landfill, and also use to go off the landfill to take to, as an example, Red Hill. Matter of fact, we even load the red diesel onto our service trucks and bring it up to Red Hill to service our vehicles there. So back to your main question, why did we exceed? I don't know if it's necessarily an issue of whether we didn't anticipate at that time that we're going to exceed $50,000. The bottom line is we did look at our books. We went, okay, we're exceeding $50,000. This needs board approval. We did put a buffer in the purchase order just in case. I just don't see us hitting that number, but that is what we've done here.
Brian, are we under a contract price to Hunt & Sons?
We are not. My understanding is that this has not been done by contract in the past. I can't really speak to that too much because not having had integrated waste for that long. What I can tell you is the plan for this coming fiscal year is to certainly go out and do the 3-bid process to see what kind of prices we can get back. So I think that is a responsible thing to do. I can't speak as to why that wasn't done in the past, or even if it has been done in the past that I'm unaware of. But I can assure you that one of the things that we are making a priority is to have this along with other items that integrated waste deals with for services going out to bid, including, as an example, I'll be bringing back to the board in the near future, there'll be a time for closing phase 2 of Rock Creek and opening phase 3, and that's going out to bid very shortly as well.
So you spoke to, could we, as part of this, because of the volatility of the market right now, could we be looking at 3 informal quotes rather than just locking it into a decision regarding Hunt & Sons only? They probably are the best price in the market right now, but to just due diligence of finding out what everybody else has got out there as well.
I mean, I think that that's certainly something we can look at. My primary concern at this point is that we're in the last quarter of the fiscal year. I've got 3 months to wrap up the operations for the remainder of the fiscal year, and my concern would be that even those informal quotes, especially, well, if they're non-RFP, we could probably get the informal quotes, but the issue is I'm concerned that I don't want to hold up delivery of fuel for the remainder of the 3 months, and that's why we're concentrating on making sure we get a true RFP and actually 3 real valid bids going into the new fiscal year.
I have no intention of holding up fuel deliveries for sure.
Thank you.
But I just, I am concerned, again, because you've seen the market
yes,
in the last 30 days.
Absolutely.
And they're suggesting this might be record-breaking prices here by summer.
Absolutely.
That means that we're going to have to be very cautious on how we procure fuel, and that we might, in the next fiscal year, look at a change in how that policy is derived, so that we can be sure that we're trying to get as close to rack price as possible.
Absolutely agree with
I'm talking
that.
in industry terms here, but it just makes no sense to just accept whatever a bulk delivery is going to be without checking to see what everybody else is in the market.
I would certainly agree with that, and certainly that's a responsible thing to do. And as some of you know me for some period of time, you know that I'm always looking to find ways of stretching that dollar, if you will, in my program. So definitely I'm in line with that, in agreement with that.
And you're just a small component to the larger fuel purchase delivery that's happening within our government center. This includes even others. Maybe we need to be looking at shared contracts with CCWD and other agencies in the county to develop a blanket purchase order that puts us into a larger scale than what we are right now. I know there's advantages of doing that. Whether or not we're ready to do it and how quickly we can do it is another matter.
Agreed. Absolutely agree.
That's the purpose of my pulling this agenda item today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Stopper.
Barring anybody else having any comments to this, I move it as is, please.
We have a motion by Supervisor Stopper. Is there a second? We'll do public comment. 1 second, and then we'll do public comment. Bring it back for a vote.
Well, I'd still like to look at some informal quotes, if nothing else, just to be sure we're in the market.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Toffenali. Public comment. Hal?
Thank you. Allen County Taxpayer Association. I wonder, are we seeing the part of the consequences of SB 1? This is that tax, fuel tax that was passed, and the repeal was not successful. Even if it's not, even if taxes are exempt because we're using this for a public purpose, it would seem wiser to tie price to some standard than to try to fix the price with a contract. If the price is fixed by the contract, then the contractor needs to build in an amount of money that would be higher than what his costs are to reduce the amount of danger of price increases during the period of time that the contract's in place. Does that make sense? So here you have suppliers that are bidding against each other and risking a certain amount of money to on the assumption that the prices would rise 10%, 20%, or whatever. And when you have a market that's so volatile, it makes sense to tie the price to something that would reflect that market at any particular time, rather than to try to fix the price. Price fixing has unintended consequences, and we want to avoid that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public comment, we have a first and second. I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We have 4 in favor, opposed by Supervisor Mills.
Thank you.
Passes. Thank you, Sue. Thank you. All right, we are going to take a
Oh,
tip.
we're not done.
I'm sorry. Right.
Item 27 is from District 1, to adopt a resolution establishing a meeting schedule for the IHSS Advisory Committee.
Ms. Newman?
The IHSS Advisory Committee exists to advise and make recommendations to the IHSS Governing Board, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors, and any other agencies related to the program regarding all aspects of the IHS program, possible changes and improvements to the program, as well as pending legislation. The IHSS Advisory Committee has been stuck on bylaws for about 5 years, not been able to make any progress. We have understood that there's an attempt to limit our meetings to 4 times a year. Every week in the IHSS program, new developments are happening. Threats from the federal government, from the state government, and even from the local authorities. We're talking about EVV, electronic visit verification, which is going to be very costly and very cumbersome to operate. We're talking about a 7% cut to services, which would impact the people that we provide services to. Since every week new developments are happening, if we meet only 4 times a year, we're not going to have the opportunity to inform you and to inform the public of the changes and the threats to the program. Second point I'd like to make, it seems like if all committees are limited to 4 times a year, that frees you guys up from a lot of your responsibilities. You only have to attend commissions, boards, and committees 4 times a year. You folks have been cutting your work hours by limiting the number of meetings that you have in the Board of Supervisors, by limiting the number of people that can come up here and speak, and the time that we're allocated. Since you guys are being able to cut back on the time that you spend representing and working for Calaveras County, I'd like to suggest maybe we need to cut your wages in half also. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any board discussion?
Board is the representative on this committee, and actually I volunteered for it since nobody else wanted to be on this committee, And we've had trouble since I've been on it, just a short time I've been on it, even having quorum. We've had to postpone meetings and postpone meetings. Many other committees, as she pointed out, there's Child Support Agency has gone to 4 times a year, and that's a multi-million-dollar committee that does a lot of different things. So I don't see this affecting that committee. It doesn't prevent them from having a special meeting if something comes down the pike through the federal government, through the state government that affects it, that they need to look at. They can also call a special meeting, discuss that, and then come forward to the board. It's not preventing that. So I was in favor of bringing this forward, and I will make the motion for it.
We have a motion by Supervisor Toffenelli. Is there a second?
I'll second. Go ahead.
Second by Supervisor Callaway. Public comment? I just said public comment. Marty?
Marty Crane, I'm the secretary for the IHSS Advisory Committee. Yes, Gary, you've attended a couple of meetings, but when you came and you mentioned that, that's not the first time we heard that. We heard that from the Director of Health and Human Services. They don't want us looking at what they do. Public authority, they don't want us looking at what they do. At least that's been the understanding for years. You weren't there, but we have the experience to know that. And you presented this having meetings 4 times a year as opposed to monthly, and the entire committee fought back on that, pushed back on that, and they said, no, we have too much work to do. And a lot of our members are persons with disabilities, and when you mentioned that we had a hard time getting a quorum because, so making it only 4 times a year, what's to say that the same reason they couldn't come last month is they were ill or in the hospital or something would be a reason why they couldn't come on one of those 4 days. So that, to me, that doesn't hold water, sorry. But the committee is totally opposed to that idea. We may be the hardest working or wanting to be the hardest working committee in the county, and the fact that nobody wanted to do it, well, you know, I did have a conversation with Marita the night after you all sat here and didn't say anything on that one committee, but jumped at everything else. She called me, and she explained that the reason, as I recall, was because she was new back to the board and didn't want to overload and wanted to have time to catch up. And other people, having been on the board, could easily, if they so choose, could engage with this committee. So far, we've had little engagement, and when there is any, it's surface. Supervisor Garamendi, you mentioned we had a short conversation in the parking lot one day, and you said, Marty, there are 2 agencies here that I fully respect, and they're at loggerheads. There's got to be a third way, but you have never come back and asked the committee what they think the third way is. So I suggest that you just drop this or deny it or whatever. Thank you.
Is there further public comment? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
I
Hey,
do want to say.
I'm sorry.
There isn't any reason that this can't be looked at again. Many committees, whether they're appointed by the board, whether they're volunteer groups that many of you belong to, are changing the time frames that they meet. And if it works quarterly, you get your quorums and you don't have to postpone, because I do read, Marty, the minutes or the notes that come from whomever on IHSS. So if Supervisor Toffenelli feels that after a year of trying this and it's not working, it can change again. But it now puts the challenge on members of IHSS to make sure that those quarterly meetings are attended and are productive.
Okay. Supervisor Mills, were you waiting to say something?
Oh, my apologies.
Very well. That concludes the regular agenda. We are going to take a 10-minute break. If you take the opportunity to silence your cell phones, while we're on break, that's appreciated as well. We'll be reconvening here at 10:25. Welcome back to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. I hope you all had a good break and silenced your phones. If you didn't, please do now. Move on to our regular agenda. Madam Clerk.
Item 28 is from the Administrative Office. 1, to approve various projects and allocate PG&E settlement funds. Determine that any and all allocations to non-county entities are in the public's benefit. Authorize and direct staff to effect the related budget transfers, which funds will ultimately be transferred on a reimbursement basis. This requires a 4/5 affirmative vote of the board. Or, direct staff to include the proposal as a standalone budget unit in the CAO's recommended budget in June 2019. This action only requires a 3/5 affirmative vote of the board.
Thank you very much. Mr. Steele, would you like to make a presentation?
Just briefly to introduce Krista Van Lottenloor. Mr. Chairman, she'll be making a presentation. Before we get there, just a little bit of background. As you know, this was discussed on March 19th, and after much discussion, the board directed staff to do three things. One is to bring the item back today as an action item. The board indicated that today's meeting would use Supervisor Garamendi's list as a concept for discussion today. There was consensus that the projects would be limited to 3 years as opposed to 5 years that was indicated in that memo. However, the funding for the set aside for state possibility of losing state and federal funds for some of our Butte Fire recovery work was kept at a 5-year maximum. With that background, I will turn it over to Krista and go through the specific projects that were discussed at the last meeting. You're on.
Great. So the projects that were presented to the board on that date are as follows. 14.6 million.
Krista, can you
Yes.
either speak up or move the mic closer to you?
$14.6 million for road repairs in the Butte Fire Zone. This was presented by, will be also further addressed by Public Works, and has been in a presentation at our last meeting. The second proposal is for $1 million for an unreimbursed amount due to the county for Butte Fire labor and expenses. $1 million for county fairgrounds. So this would be with respect to sewer facilities as a countywide evacuation center. $2 million for county disaster preparedness. These funds would be set aside for the various fire districts in the amount of $200,000 per district. In addition, we estimate a minimum of $573,398 of lost property tax. That figure's, I think, higher. In addition, $50,000 for the Sheep Ranch Fire Station and preparedness there. Community resiliency projects, one for the West Point Town Hall in the amount of $100,000. $150,000 for Central Fire, West Point Fire, $150,000 as well there, $250,000 for Central Fire, $150,000 for Moke Hill Fire, $100,000 for Community Resiliency and Mountain Ranch with their community club youth center. In addition, $100,000 for the Moke Hill Veterans District evacuation site, and $50,000 for Railroad Flat Town Hall. A total of, these are slightly off of the actual balance in the account, but just over $20 million.
Lastly, Mr. Chairman, the board also directed that we bring the road plan that was developed by Public Works. That's a separate item on today's agenda, and it could be affected by your action of this item.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we got a little bit of heavy lift here. So what I'd like to do is, one of the things we discussed at the last meeting was bringing back ideas, adding to the list that I presented, and then doing some math. So let's dig in. Supervisor Toffenali, you presented a list this morning. Do you want to talk about it, or?
Well, first off, I want to say there is a typo on it for some reason, and the second item, there's a missing zero at the back end of that. That's $2 million.
Which one?
The second item, it has two zeros on the end instead of three. It's supposed to be three, so total $2 million. I will start a little bit at the beginning here and say that I had conversations with, and I don't know if the auditor's in here, the sheriff is in here. I had some conversations, my concerns with what was presented to us after having conversations with a number of people, and I had conversations with Michelle from OES, who wasn't here during Butte Fire, but has had to deal with the recovery portions of it and a lot of other things that are going on, and hearing the stories of it, talking to the sheriff. One of the major problems we had during the fire was, and we had all along, especially with the sheriff's office, is communication problems. We have so many areas in the county that we just don't have the ability to radio in, use our radios properly, even have communication with cell phones in the area, which is vital during a disaster, and I think it really hurt us during that time, communication-wise. And I think the sheriff's prepared to step up and have a few words to say about that, because I asked him to do so this morning. If you want to come forward.
You want to?
Good morning, board members, Chairman Garamendi.
Sheriff?
What would you like to know? I just want everybody to know I didn't ask for any money from this. No. I want to be upfront with that.
Over the years in a roundabout way.
A different situation. I did not.
Going back to our conversation yesterday, and you said that there was a plan being worked on. You want to elaborate somewhat on what that plan is and some of the fundings that are needed to go forward to get that into place?
Okay. We have been working with CCWD, and we have just, you're going to see next on the 23rd, we have a donation from the American Red Cross. We were able to build a radio tower up in White Pines. The radio infrastructure in this county, in the 17 years I've been at this department, has been non-existent. It's terrible. There's a lot of areas, especially in District 2, you're probably our worst area up there because of the topography. We just have no radio service, so when we have the Butte fire, our radio towers went down. I had one person tell me, well, we could have sent up smoke signals, but the problem was there was so much smoke in the air, smoke signals wouldn't have worked. But the reality is that the way and this could be an 8-hour long discussion. There's two different bands out there. There's high band and a low band. And real basic, high band runs line of sight, low band follows the topography of the land. The problem is everybody, and when I say everybody, I'm talking all radio systems are going to high band. They're getting away from the low band. So we can't even buy low band radios anymore. I have new vehicles sitting in my parking lot that I cannot put on the street because we don't have high band radio system to work with the high band radios that we have to purchase. So we're looking at going to a digital program. CCWD has been an absolute fantastic partner, and they have allowed us to utilize that tower that we have in White Pines, and they have multiple towers within the county that we can utilize. We've been working with, well, it will benefit our OES program, it'll benefit our ambulance service, it'll benefit the fire departments, it will benefit our road department, our probation department, our HHS. Anybody who uses radios in our county will benefit from being able to utilize CCWD's towers and adding microwave systems and what we call a P25 compatible radio that will allow us to go digital. It's got a price tag. The problem is, I can't stand here today and tell you what the price tag is because it's going to take so much work to figure out what that price tag is. I can give you a ballpark, but I don't want anybody hold me to that because, again, it's a ballpark figure. I can't go to Columbia Communications or any of these other communications companies and say, hey, tell me what it's going to cost to build out this program because it's going to be so intensive. We have, some of you know where we have our radio towers right now. We need to add more microwave sites. Each microwave site is going to cost you somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000, plus the cost of the P25 compatible radio that will go on those towers. So it's a big price tag to put this program together. Then we have to replace the radios in the cars because they're low band. We need to go to high band. County roads is going to end up having to do the same thing. HHS, everybody that's on the radio system in order to get to that digital system is going to have to be upgraded. So it's a huge price tag. So, I mean, it's a work in progress. Again, we've been band-aiding this radio system that we have since I've been a deputy here. And we need to get out of the 16th century and into the 22nd century because that's the difference. That is the difference. And the problem is, again, that we cannot purchase the radios that we've been using for years. The only people that I know of right now that are still using low band is CHP out of Stockton and us. And if you talk to any CHP officer out on the street, they'll tell you their radios are crap too. They don't get out, especially when we get down into these canyons. So.
Any questions for the sheriff?
What's CAL FIRE using?
That's a question for CAL FIRE. I don't know. We're not on their system. We don't communicate with them. We do have a second radio in our vehicles that we can communicate with them. I'm not technologically enough to know what system they're using, though. Maybe Chief Dickinson from
Fire chief.
Fire Chief. He can attest to that because they talk to them all the time. We're
sure
not on that system.
This has been an issue going back years, I agree, going from low band to high band, but we had received grants to make some of these changes. We had a partnership program going with Alpine County on the communication system. I mean,
That goes back years when Clay Hawkins was still here. He was writing all those grants through OES. My understanding, Marita, is that those grants have gone away. We're having a hard time finding grants for those funds anymore. I don't know if there's new grants because of the fires. I know that Jack and I talked offline a little bit about this. It's just a matter of starting to dig into finding if those grants are available again. And I'm willing to do that. I don't have a problem with that, and we're looking, but we keep getting shot down. And that doesn't change the price tag. It's just trying to find the funding. Because most of those grants are very specific, and you got to understand, if we had to go out and purchase property to build a tower, that price tag is huge. The fact that we can utilize CCWD, because they're a great partner, that is going to help, but a lot of grants are not. We can't utilize CCWD because it's a private entity.
Can I make a suggestion? Because we've got a lot of items here, and if we start going through, what I'd like to do is, Supervisor Stefano, if you give your whole presentation, then we can discuss what we want to include. We get down there, and we could really get deep in there, but I don't want to, we could talk communications for hours. In fact,
That's what I'm saying, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't know the rest of his day. I wanted to get him in first, so he's.
I'm here at your disposal.
You're here for the whole day?
I am here for the whole day.
With this ticket out, I'm sure the sheriff will probably want to show up, stick around.
I know there's an agenda item at the very end that I'll be very involved in, so I'm here for the duration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor Stefano.
Yeah, well, we can just go through it if you want, and the reasons why I have funds there for what I have funds there.
Let's go through it, and we'll go back and question.
Okay.
The first one, $5 million, I don't feel is fiscally responsible to just spend $20 million because we have it. We won a lottery, let's spend it all. I don't think, I think if you spend it all right now, since we are still recovering and there could be other items that come forward, the funds are gone. I don't think that's the correct way of doing it. We're continually missing property taxes, which I have a conversation with Rebecca earlier this week on.
Arturo. Supervisor Toffenali,
Yeah.
sorry.
So I feel that we should keep at least $5 million in reserve as we go forward, so we can fall back on anything that comes as an issue related to this in the future. I earmarked $5,350,000 for road repairs after I went over the list of the road repairs in the presentation that was given to us by Josh. I felt a lot of those roads weren't paved to begin with, and I can't see spending money to repave or pave something that wasn't paved to begin with. This is my opinion, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Supervisor Toffenali, if I might, hey, everybody, please, we have to really be careful and limit our sniping comments. People have different opinions here. We want to be respectful, and please, if you'll do that, I would appreciate it. Supervisor Toffenali?
As we discussed before, and had a conversation with Rebecca Callan about our FEMA audit and the amount that was possibly needed to cover that we could not reclaim when we go through that audit. Kept with that. And kept with the $2,350,000 for disaster preparedness divided among the 10 fire district. And that's pretty much what was presented to us earlier. I had a further conversation with Rebecca Callan on the amount of money actually spent out of general fund that's not going to be able to be recovered by FEMA. And her estimate, she's still trying to get complete estimates on what that is, was around $600,000. So that was already expended. That had to do with a lot of different things, public works, other departments, and so forth, that has been expended. So I think that money came out of general fund. It needs to go back into general fund. Had a conversation with Michelle as far as OES. Excuse me, I'll go on. That's further down the line. $852,034 for lost property taxes. I think that amount of fund is even, as presented earlier on the other proposal that Supervisor Garamendi had, we are moving forward year after year on unapproved properties that we are losing taxes. I think we need to, in the future, move forward to cover those lost taxes as we go forward. And we don't know if some of those properties will ever be improved again. So we need to cover those taxes. I had a conversation the other day with the city on the proposal for the $1 million allocated in the previous proposal for the fairgrounds, and they improved their sewer system out there. That's failing, and at that time on the 19th, I felt to be in agreement on it. But I did have a conversation with the city concerning this, and there are some issues. This is not a project per se shovel ready. The city is still trying to seek funds to get sewer line out there. And then part of their concerns are also, if that happens and this hooks up, how are they going to cover the maintenance, and can they cover the influx of what this, during the fair time, of what that's going to be for their facilities, whether they can cover it or not. So there's a lot of questions. So I kept the $1 million in there. I figured we can revisit it in a year and see where the city is on it, how far they've gotten, if they got funding, what's happening with it. Again, that can be revisited. I'd put $650,000 in there for the following centers to be used to upgrade and prepare the centers for future evacuations. And all of these that are listed here are all evacuation centers, registered evacuation centers. and a lot of them, some of them felt the brunt during the time of evacuations, and were totally unprepared, and need to be brought up for receiving evacuees. It's not just we have a building, come here. That's not what happens. And I was part of the ones at the vet hall and saw what it took to be able to bring people in there and have them actually live there 24/7. Some of them were there for about 3 or 4 weeks. And it's not just here's a cot, have fun. There's a lot of things that go into it. You have to feed them. You have to have restroom facilities. You have to clean them. They have to be showered. Just everyday life going on in these facilities for people that actually live there. I talked to Michelle and the OES. They were totally unprepared. We didn't even have an OES officer at the time this disaster broke. We certainly did not have a center, a headquarters center, to be able to coordinate everything that's going on. So I spoke to her, and I felt that if we could get her the equipment and at least in the right direction for a center to be set up, that $850,000 would be sufficient. She agreed. I put $600,000 for the additional 3 fire districts that was in your original, Supervisor Germany's original proposal. And the total was the full sum of $20,252,034.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Toffenelli. Appreciate that. Any other supervisors have suggestions to add to our list? I appreciate your work on that area. Supervisor Mills?
Yes, and Sheriff, you got an email from me as well to be here. To me, the communication aspect is the black hole that needs to be dealt with on a priority basis. And the reason I say that is because the old 151175, the chiefs are sitting in the back room, you remember it. And you also remember the 5 repeaters that we had here in this county in White 1. If we're going to convert to digital and P25 technology, it needs to be done in bulk, in mass. It cannot be staged in. You cannot pick and choose as to which departments are going to use it and which ones aren't, because in a disaster, they all have to be, in essence, capable of talking to one another. So we're either going to grab that entire process of communications and flip up to a high band, or we're going to just piece it together and it will never work properly in an emergency. So if there's anything in this list that has been presented by both of these supervisors, that is the one thing that rings very loudly to me, simply because of having been engaged in those disasters myself. So it has a personal level when you're trying to get your communication out. I remember the days when everybody remembered the cell phones that you carried as a bag phone, the big, thick, heavy bag phones.
No, I don't remember.
I wasn't born yet.
Oh, yeah, you probably were. But we had many fire districts that carried those bag phones because even the normal low-band radios did not work. And there were certain areas, you get down into the Stanislaus Canyon, nothing worked. Those are the areas that make us the most vulnerable. And if you're not capable of communicating efficiently and quickly, you'll find that one of the things that is going to come out of the campfire discussion is how do we get that emergency broadcast out quickly enough as the fire scene is so rapidly evolving. And the communications aspect is critical, and it is an obvious one where AT&T had to do what in Mountain Ridge? They had to bring in portable towers and throw them up in the air. Well, what's to say we can't do that? There was a time when Vallecito Station had an air tower on a trailer that we could throw up in the air. We have to be looking at these options, but to realize that, yes, it would be great for us to spend a lot of money on roads, but if we are going to leave ourselves communication deficient here, we're putting ourselves in a very tenuous position in the longer term. And if we're going to solve this for the longer term, to me, that communications piece is the critical part. When I look at this issue, we have coverage maps. This is not new territory. Your cable systems and your broadband systems, they have coverage maps that are very well defined in our area. AT&T has great coverage maps as well. One of the things that really rang home also was when those fiber optic line got cut. Remember? About, 2 weeks ago now? And how quickly did it take down the entire system for this county? Not just landline, but cell phone too. That means that the communication system that we need to put together has to be robust enough to overcome that deficiency to keep our emergency services able to communicate effectively and not leave us in a shortfall. So this all just comes back to maybe the roads aren't the key issue that we need to talk about here.
Supervisor Mills, I think
Yes,
what
sir.
we want to do is add to the list, and then we'll discuss all the items.
I will, okay. But
So if
this
you got
is,
things you want to add, let's throw them in.
well, we'll discuss each one of these pieces because I think we're all pretty much there as to what we've got to have.
We'll talk about it. Supervisor Callaway?
I'm not sure how you want us to do this.
What would you like to
but-
add to the list? And we'll talk
Oh,
about
I want to add Bear Valley. I want to add Independence Hall. I mean, I've been evacuated twice. I've been at Bear Valley. I've been at Independence Hall. I've been at Michelson Elementary School for days at a time. So I'm somewhat having a concern, and I understand that these places that Supervisor Garamendi and Tuffanelli put out are the result of the Butte fire, but the old Gulch, it was different, and the Darby, it was different. So what is it that we're putting money into, and for what purpose? When I was evacuated for a week, I mean, the Red Cross was there, Health and Human Services were there, people I didn't even know were there. I mean, helping to feed us and making sure we had a place to sleep. And so this isn't the only place in Calaveras County. So my question is not that maybe we shouldn't be giving funds to these centers, but what is it? I mean, I look at Jenny Lynn Vet's Hall, it's a brand-new building. What is it that we're doing at that building that we might not be doing at the Mountain Ranch Community Hall? I mean, or San Andreas Town Hall. I mean, I could understand it needs help, but I mean, to be paying for services is a whole different issue than paying for some of the upgrades to the centers for future evacuations, because I've got 3 or 4 in District 3 I can put in.
Okay. So Supervisor Stopper, did you have something? We'll talk about the totals once we get our list set, then we're going to play math.
Thank you.
Play nice or play math?
Play math.
I'll play math.
There'll be real math, but we're going to probably be playing it.
We don't have to play nice, Breda. I brought up, and I see the good in the two proposals that have been put in front of us. Whether the numbers I concur with or not on either are to be determined later in the day. But I do want to see a little bit more put into the reserve account for unseen expenses, such as the FEMA issues in the future, because we don't know what those are going to be. And I had brought that up earlier during the first meeting. Also, I see Supervisor Toffanelli had raised the amount going to each individual fire department of all 10 fire districts. And this is something I concur with, although I would like to add another $30,000 to that number on each one of those, so that they can each individually be able to get a Type 3 engine, which not only gives them the opportunity to coordinate together during the next fire, whether it be District 3, District 2, District 1, District 5, or District 4, They all work together and coordinate, and this is part of preparedness. So, and then they can go out and make money during the summer so that they can start becoming reliant themselves. So that's another thing I can support, but I want to support more.
Okay. You want to add anything to the list?
You know, honestly, I think Marita does have a good point. I think there's other places up 3 that do need to be considered. When the Old Gulch cut fire came through, they were cut off going down the hill. That fire line saved them in the end before it got to Highway 4. But there was a time where people were having to evacuate towards Bear Valley instead of down the hill, and they were cut off. And I think has to be thought for disaster preparedness across the county equally. Even though the Butte fire is the result of the reason we have this money, preparedness comes as a whole in its entirety.
All right. Let's do this really quick then, if that's all right with everybody. Gary, would you consider, I'm just figuring out how many new columns we're going to put in here. Gary, would you consider the reserves that you've got set aside the same as lost property tax reimbursements? I just went through the list, and there's 5 items that don't match up to the other ones. So I'm just figuring out if any of them fit with other items or whether they're independent. Yeah, the first one that was that's different on your list versus the one that was submitted before is the $5 million reserve account.
The $5 million reserve, excuse me, $5 million reserve account, again, I felt we needed to hold some back in reserve, and obviously we're having discussions about upcountry and some evacuation centers up there. Certainly some of that money can come out for that. But my concern is going forward, if we find things that we don't know about now, if we spend all of this money, there's no reserve to take care of it.
Okay. So I think that's a separate.
Yeah. So
Separate item.
I do have one other thought, and that's just something that came to mind as a result of a discussion with the fire agency. In the Sheep Ranch area, your reserves on water are notoriously weak, and CCWD doesn't have the ability right now to provide any additional storage capacity up there. Is that something that we just add to the list to have a little bit more discussion? And
Actually, Supervisor Mills, that's actually included under the Central Fires proposal.
Okay, as long as we can see what...
We could have them come up when we get to the numbers.
Yeah, just check a box
unpack
there.
it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Tuffanelli, you were...
what was the next item?
So the next item is, let me see, is there a consensus that we all want to have, that we want to have a line item of reserve? Is that just, no? Okay.
No.
I don't mind having a reserve. I think 5 million's too much. My experience on this board in the past and watching the board the last 4 years and knowing what's going to have, and I'm not
Oh, you did watch the board the last 4 years.
on occasion, I watch you at budget time, because that's where my comment's going. The board, when times get really tough, we take from places that we don't think are going to impact departments or staff and layoff. So we tap into teeter, or we reduce the reserve to like something that's very unhealthy. And if we had $5 million sitting there and things go down the rabbit hole, then I know the board's going to say, oh, well, we have this $5 million reserve, let's take $1 million or $2 million. Where if it was something a little, because that's a big number, and if there was something maybe a little bit more manageable, which makes it a little more sacrosanct, then I would be supportive. I will not be supportive of $5 million.
Supervisor Mills?
Krista, can you recall what the staff's recommendation was and last week's meeting regarding the reserve? Because there was a number that was there.
You mean the
weren't
last
here
three
last
sessions?
week.
Yeah, when we discussed this, there was, and you had presented your
The suggestion
option.
to fund is increase the county's general fund reserve to provide for possible shortages that could result in economic downturn, which I think is, which Supervisor Tuffin.
But there was, did the staff recommend a number at that time?
He did not.
Did not?
No.
Because I think we need to have a reserve too.
I'm not stuck on $5 million. That's the number that I put out there. I felt comfortable, and part of it had to do with the communication service. If we start getting this communication service that we probably pretty much all agree that needs to be addressed, and this is the ability to do it, that we would have reserves. I understand what Maria is saying, but I don't think that will happen
Well, let's
for
just
this.
see, let's just see if it's going to stay on there. So Dennis, where's your position?
I'm in support of a reserve account. I don't know is even 5 million, where that's going to be. That's why I'd like to know what the staff's recommendation would be on it as well.
Supervisor Stopper?
I am in favor of a reserve. We can determine that number later today.
Supervisor Tofinelli, obviously, yes. I am not in support of that, but it'll stay on the list as 3-0 and 3-2, and we will discuss numbers, what that's going to be next. All right, the next item you had on there that's not on the list is the communications with the SO's office. And we had a little presentation.
Yeah, we had a little presentation and having some conversations with various departments, OES, sheriffs.
I have some questions on it.
That I felt this is a vital item that needs to be addressed with this money. We're talking about disaster monies that we got and preparedness. We have to do something with our communications here. The next disaster, who knows what's going to happen. If we don't have the critical areas that we need to have addressed now and moving forward. So that's why this number is in here. I didn't have an exact number. I just plugged this number in here because I know that the conversation with low band and high band with the sheriff, if he's going to go, he needs to high band like everything is going. He can't replace the radios as now. He's got cars sitting out there he can't use. That we need to put money in there at least to get the communications up to where we can use what we have.
Can I ask, Sheriff, can I ask a couple questions on it?
Big cat.
It's a big dog. Sheriff, you and I met back in January with your Sergeant of Communications, Wade, and after a good 45-minute conversation, I was thoroughly confused as to what is going on.
Join the radio communication system.
And I know that this has been something that's been going on since 9/11, actually, when we discovered there was a problem, and we're, 19 years later, and we still haven't solved it. So there's no question there's a problem, but there's also no question we don't know if this is big. I mean, we know it's going to cost a ton of money, but we don't know when we'll have the solution, the universal solution. We don't know how much that universal solution is going to cost. We don't know if Cal OES, with all the recent disasters, is going to fund what they've talked about. If I remember correctly, for about 18 years, they've been talking about a statewide communications system where everybody's on the same page. So you can talk to the CHP on the same radio when you're doing your job. So it seems to me this is just kind of a nebulous, yes, it's going to come someday, but we don't know what that is right now.
Well, there is a system that they're trying to put together right now that will allow us to communicate with LA County. Why they want to do that, I have no idea. That's something that's well beyond our lifetime down the road. The ability right now to communicate within the county with all the entities in the county is available to us right now. You're looking at a $5 to $6 million price tag, and that's just Sheriff Rick's estimate. I'm not a communication guy, just in the people that I've been talking to, that's kind of a ballpark of what you're talking about. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less. But the ability to put the digital system in place is a viable thing to do right now, today. The system is available to us. It's a matter of getting the bid put together and getting the cost put together to put that infrastructure together. So the ability to do it now is there. It's not like what I just talked about, being able to communicate with LA County. That's something that the state's been trying to do since 9/11. That's not going to happen in our lifetimes, I'll be honest with you. But the ability for us to be able to communicate within this county with our other law enforcement partners, fire partners, probation, everybody that is in this county now is doable now. But there's a price tag, and it's going to take a board action to say, okay, staff, figure out what it's going to cost, talk to somebody, and go put an RFP out there to figure out what it's going to cost. But it is doable.
But this is this is obviously going to be a recurring expense because we're going to have to be paying for this stuff for a very long time because it's going to be more, things change.
Well,
your
yeah,
communications is an ongoing expense on your
It is.
department.
It is, but I think you're getting into the digital time frame that we're in now. It's like going from 8 tracks to CDs or cassettes to CDs. Our technology is ever expanding, but we're so far behind the ball right now, we're still in 8-track days. We should at least be in CD days, and we need to get there, and the way to get there right now is a big jump.
You mentioned earlier in your presentation that we haven't explored alternate sources of income for this, correct?
Correct. That is something
so there might be grants out there. We don't know.
And there may be, and that might be something that Michelle can talk to. I don't know if she's looked into that. Every time we as a sheriff's office have looked into that, we keep getting shot down because we're trying to utilize private property.
Are there other questions for the sheriff? Supervisor Stopper?
I've been with, let's just say, working for the other entity that you are coordinating with. So there's some opportunity there to coordinate with them on some of the towers that they already have.
Oh, absolutely. CCWD has come, and they've worked with us, and they told us, hey, we're here in your county. We're willing to work with you. They're part of us. So they've already reached out to us, and that's where the White Pines project came in. We've already put that tower up, and they're maintaining it. That was a grant that was donated by the American Red Cross, who was given to Fosco, and Fosco donated it to the sheriff's office, and you'll see all that in a couple of weeks. The bottom line is CCWD is a partner that is willing to work with us today and into the future. They're an asset to us, and I think we need to utilize that benefit that they're giving us, and it's a benefit to the whole county. Again, every department in this county that uses a radio system has the ability to move forward.
And to talk to the situation in the Butte Fire, we were down for quite some time, and we actually lost some of our services during that time. I'm not going to speak directly to which services, but it was a barrier to saving people and fighting the fire at the time when we went to radio silence for a little while.
Yeah, it was a big issue.
Yes.
Radio silence for us is a big issue, as it is for CAL FIRE, CHP, for anybody. Road departments, we couldn't communicate with anybody in a couple of areas, yes.
Right. And that includes our air attack and everything else.
Yeah.
Supervisor Mills, you have a question?
Well, not so much for the sheriff, but if we want to stay on the issue of communication, I'd like to bring one of the chiefs up. I have a question for them.
Sure.
Chief Stone, Chief Johnson, which,
They're drawing lots.
they're drawing lots back there.
I think Del Ordo should step up.
Yeah, there you go. Good morning, Chief.
Hey, good morning. How are
Thanks
you?
for a moment of your time.
Sure.
You folks went through this conversion on radios about how long ago with CAL FIRE?
You mean for P25 compliance? I know that there's a lot of funding mechanisms that required P25 compliance, as you mentioned. Going back with some of the Department of Homeland Security funding just required the actual hardware to be P25. Now, again, not being a techie on all the communications, I'm not sure when that P25 compliance had, turned on, or even if all the handhelds are and the mobiles are and the radio towers are, but there are people that are locally, situated through, we do a lot of the ECC dispatch with CAL FIRE. They're accessible to come and talk to the board, I'm sure, with their subject matter experts.
And there's a time they're bringing in a fire cache radios as necessary within their structure to be sure that those communication links are maintained with departments that don't have the capability, correct?
Yeah, my experience in larger campaign fires is the onset or the initial attack, as we call it. In other words, minute one to full spool up of a type 1 incident management team that can bring in resources. I mean, there's a time lapse there. So if you have infrastructure of any type that's impacted, of course, it can be overcome with, substitute type equipment like that, radio caches, portable radio towers. I think you even mentioned an AT&T vertical stand-up to enhance communication, but that took some time. So there's that gap if, infrastructure is impacted, and these larger fires that consume massive amounts of acreage, I think we can assume are going to impact the infrastructure in some way.
So it's sounding as though the communication issue needs to be dealt with as a single item and a very broad discussion with all of the partners to really thoroughly understand what we're up against and who can bring the best game to the table, so to speak.
I'd go as far to say, from my understanding and my perspective, which is just a singular perspective, is that you have a system that's working on these various different locations that are using, VHF, relatively low, not ultra low frequencies, and that's mostly the CAL FIRE. You also have higher frequencies that are up in the 700 and 800 megahertz that have so much capability, but they require a lot of infrastructure, especially when you're dealing with topography like the Sierra Nevada mountains. I know I'm just up here as one voice, and my opinion is that you would need some sort of a, overseeing, somebody who understands, or some group that understands all the options. The cost I'm not sure of, or what the best option would be, but the communication world is vast, and you probably need some sort of a navigator for that.
Okay, appreciate your answers.
I have a question to the sheriff. Sheriff, your comments earlier were that when you were trying to get grants before, that it was virtually impossible because of private property. You were trying to go on private property. Now you're looking at partnering with CCWD. You're going forward that way. So that seems to be not going to affect going forward. If we put money into this, $2 million, $3 million, whatever, to go forward, to get you going, to get a project moving forward, the availability of grants to you, if there's money out there, would be easier to get. Would that not be true? Because they would see that we don't have that stumbling block before us before. We actually have project money committed to it and moving forward.
I would think it would. I don't know what the government thinks and how they look at different grants. The potential is there to say, look, we've got this amount of money that we're going to be putting forward. We're going to need some help for the infrastructure. And I'm sure, in talking to Marita, there is grants out there. It's just the cost was so high that we hadn't taken the time to look for those grants. I know we have looked for some, and we've been shot down. It doesn't mean there's not more out there, and we will continue to look. And if this is a board direction, you guys want me to start looking a lot harder, I absolutely will.
And as our conversation yesterday, I think Jim was more involved in it, but at one point, the SO did have a lobbying group go back with a plan to lobby with MIA in Washington, D.C. for funding for a lot of this, what we're speaking of now.
Yeah.
And that never transpired because 2008 hit and everything.
Everything tanked.
But
yeah.
that plan is still there. We still have a copy of that plan, whether it's viable now or not. So it could be the beginning of some project or the basis of something moving forward.
And again, you got to remember, if you go back to 2008 up until 2015 in the Butte fire, and actually even into 17 with the other fires that we've had, Cal OES pulled way back on a lot of grants. They stopped putting funding out there. But I think because of the light that the fires that we've had in this state over the past 2 to 3 years, 4 years, has really made OES and the state government and the federal government look a little bit differently at what's going on out there, that maybe they have brought in more grants that are available to get. It's just a matter of finding them and putting somebody on that. I don't have OES in my house anymore, it's now Michelle, so that would be something for them to look into, and I don't, again, have a problem looking into it ourselves from the sheriff's office standpoint, because it affects us just as bad as it affects everybody else. It's something that needs to be addressed. That's the bottom line.
Thank you.
Do you have another question?
No question. I was just,
So let me ask the question. What is the feeling about keeping communications on this list? Supervisor Toffenelli, obviously yes.
Yes.
Supervisor Stopper?
something Supervisor Toffenelli brought up was this could be part of the reserve account, put in there, whether or not it's itemized to communication or reserve in the future, and the number is debatable still, but I could be in support of it.
Supervisor Mills, where are you at?
I'm in support of it. I'm not certain that 2 million is going to be enough, and yet it might be. It just really depends on what's out there. So until we have a complete and thorough look at this, I would just like to leave the number as it is and then make our adjustments somewhere down the road.
Supervisor Callaway, where do you stand on this?
Yes and no.
Thank you.
I kind of agree with Supervisor Stopper, maybe have a reserve account, and the issue is something nobody in here seems to have an answer for or any clear idea. And that could be just a component, but not to line item it.
And I'm not in support of this just because I don't think it's fully baked. I have no doubt there's a problem. I don't know the scope and scale of it. And most of the other stuff is very concrete, shovel on the ground. So I don't doubt there's a problem. I just don't think we ought to sit. I've known there's a problem for 18 years, or 19 years since 9/11, and I'd hate to set aside money and wait another 18 years. That would collect a lot of interest. So it sounds like, Ben, you're a yes or a no on putting this on?
I'm on the same line as Marita is, yes and no. It's, you know, we're gonna have to iron it out here in a little bit, but let's proceed.
Okay, I'm gonna bring that one back. So that's a yes or no. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome,
Making
Jack.
my job really easy.
So where does maybe fit in?
Where's what?
Where does maybe fit in?
That's a yes and a no.
Yeah, that's the third. I apologize. All right, the next item that was new to the list that was presented a couple weeks ago is Jenny Lind Veterans District. Supervisor Toffenelli, you want to say anything, or you want to just see where everybody's at?
Yeah, I don't know why we're singling that particular one out.
Well, I'm just,
but
what I did was I went through the list and I said, okay, these are, looking at Gary's list and looking at the list that was there, these are the ones that were added to that list, and if everybody
Okay,
agrees, just add them all in there.
I'll respond to what Marita has to say. Her comment, certainly probably other people's going through their mind, this is a new building, oh my God, why are we giving them money when this is a brand-new building? Well, that is true, but it is not true. That building was built as a shell because the board of that district decided to move forward on something they didn't have full funding on. So what you saw was a building that sat there in just a shell for a number of years. And then the board, a new board came into effect and seeked out a loan to at least finish that building inside and out so it could be used, because the old building itself was completely falling apart. When it rained inside, and it was completely inadequate and too small. So they moved forward, and they got it to a point where it was framed and ready to move in, but they could not get a certificate of occupancy for it because they did not have the funding to finish everything that was needed and that was submitted as plans to the building department. So they are operating now under a temporary occupancy order, which has a length of time before they have to have all the items finished. That building has a slab in it that was poured, in my opinion, not per plans, and so it has major cracks in it that are lifting up. It needs to be ground down and flush, and you cannot send people in there to live during a disaster with floors that are uneven and major cracks in it. That needs to be fixed. There's a number of items that need to make that building prepared, much like the other ones that are listed here, to be able to house anybody in a disaster. And it is one of the larger buildings, as we listed here, along with Town Hall here, that can take a number of people in during a disaster and house them. It has the number of restrooms available to them to meet the needs of it. One of the major problems we had before during the Butte fire is there was 2 bathrooms and that was it, and there was a number of people in there, and it wasn't, they were overflowing, we had them pumped, it was a major problem. The new building does have the facilities needed. However, it needs to be upgraded to be able to receive people, and that's the reason it's on this list. The same thing with Town Hall here in San Andreas. It needs to be upgraded and prepared for taking on any of the evacuees that need to come here. During the Butte fire, they did show up here, but then San Andreas was evacuated, so they had to move on down the hill. It's in need, and not only in need of repairs to accommodate people, but the stocking of the necessary items in it to be prepared for it, which a lot of this money needs to go to, as we were talking preparedness. So that's why those 2 items are on there.
Thank you. Comments on we'll take them one at a time. Supervisor Stopper.
During our first meeting on this, I brought up, a majority of in the Butte fire zone was evacuated during this time. So, when it comes to disaster preparedness, it goes both ways and it goes across the county. I brought up the fact that Glory Bound Church down outside of Burson was a tent camp, multiple places. So in a way, I do agree with this, and I think if it would be all right, I could have Mr. Sullivan or Garza bring up a letter from the American Red Cross that justifies part of the reason why we could, that it's one of the approved spots for disaster relief and everything else. If you're willing to take that and have them provide it to you, it's a good letter from Debbie Calcote, with a disaster program manager with the American Red Cross, and if they're willing.
Supervisor Mills, you have a comment? Or?
Yeah, I'd like to add one other center into this thing for evacuations, and that is the fairgrounds. Everything seems to land at the fairgrounds, and yet we put no money in here.
Fairgrounds is up, we have $1 million.
That's for sewer. That has nothing to do with the rest of the facility that are out there.
We could add to that and add that as.
I would just like to make a note, if we're going to support evacuation centers, the sewer issue is a separate issue to me.
Okay.
How do we properly support the building and grounds area that we use at the fairgrounds?
We could,
exactly.
Well,
So,
okay, that's already in there.
just plug it in.
When we get to the math,
Okay.
we could add and subtract.
I'm just going to plug it in.
Anything else on Ginny Lynn?
No.
Supervisor?
Could they submit their letters real quick so you'd have them on hand?
If they'd like to,
Yeah,
sure.
if they can read it into record, that'd be fine.
Actually, we're trying to get through this, but fine. Go ahead. Well, I think it might be, no
Mr.
one's
Gardner.
doubting that you guys are, that you're at an evacuation center. Is there any doubt on the board that they're a place that we evacuated to?
They were.
We can wait till public comment and let them read it in at that time.
That might be good.
That would be good for us.
We'll go to public comment before we get to our math problem.
Okay, appreciate it.
Supervisor Mills?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Callaway, you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm now getting concerned, so now we're going to stock places. I mean, I'm not having a problem saying, okay, are we going to contribute to Jenny Lynn Vets Hall to make some minor repairs? I don't know if a floor is a minor repair or not. But I am not into supporting evacuation centers and stocking them all over the county of Calaveras. That isn't what I see as the purpose of the settlement funds. And if there's something specific and it costs X amount to repair the floors, like it might cost X amount to repair something at West Point Town Hall, and they do it within a 3-year period, you know, I can maybe support that, but then maybe should I be adding Independence Hall to that process? Should I be adding Bear Valley to that process? And then, the Butte fire is what brought us all here today. But it was the Darby, and it was flooding down. I remember getting a call one year saying, Marita, it's flooding in Arnold. I said, it's flooding. You have the wrong supervisor. You want Terry Bailey. She's the one who's, oh no, it's flooding in Arnold. Well, it doesn't flood in Arnold, but it did one year. Or we have a center when we have a real cold spell, and the power's out, and people don't have wood. And so I asked the fire department, could you please open up a center? It was before we had such a good OES department. And they did that. So should I be asking our fire department, could you be doing something? I mean, where does this stop and start? So I would want something a little bit more specific on Jenny Lynn and San Andreas Town Hall, the same as I had said to Supervisor Garamendi about West Point, Mountain Ranch, and Moke Hill, et cetera. So I'm not for just blanketing 150 to Jenny Lynn or 100 to San Andreas.
We're just deciding if they're on the list, and then we'll decide if they're on what we're going to do.
Now, you wanted to add Independence?
Let's add every evacuation center in Calaveras County to the list.
So then that would count that as a yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify one thing that she's brought up, and I'll tell you a little bit of story. It's not this money stocking it. Red Cross will stock it. We had cots and other things that were stored at the old Vets Hall by Red Cross. And because of the lack of storage and the cleanliness and the ability to maintain that, when we went to pull those cots and stuff out on hand right away, when we got the influx of evacuees, we could not use them. We had to throw them away. So we need to set up the area when we talk about preparedness to be able to take that on and have it available and ready and be able to use it, and it's clean and ready to go and not sitting out in areas that it destroys it. That's what I was talking about, stocking, okay, not county money going towards that. Red Cross, when they designate these areas and has it stocked for immediate use when a disaster hits.
So she wants all emergency shelters listed
I'm not sure whether, well, we've already done the part of the meeting where we talked about where we're at.
And we've got
I think
votes here, I think.
Supervisor Callaway was expressing frustration, unless you are not.
Oh, no, that's
Okay.
good work.
I don't want to interpret wrong. Okay, so Jenny Lynn and San Andreas are on the list. One last one is OES. You have 850,000. But do you want to talk about why you want OES on this list?
Well, I think OES is an important aspect of all of this. If we're going to talk about preparedness, we were totally lack in preparedness when Butte Fire hit, as far as having an OAS. We didn't even have an officer at the time.
I'm just thinking for the one-time expense, what would we use it? I mean, is there a one-time expense thing that we need to do? Not the ongoing
Well, I
operations.
think it has to do with Michelle, and if you want to have her speak about it now, she can bring it up. But I think this is necessary funding for that office. As far as going for equipment that she needs or items that she needs to set up a center, we do need to put money towards the center to set it up when some disaster hits. We did not have one. We used the sheriff's office at the time, and it was not the same thing about the sheriff, but it was not the best place to do it at.
Don't we have
And it
dinner?
affected our ability as OES trying to get our constituents and citizens of our county the information they need and the places they need to go. When we had evacuations happening, we had families split up. There were so many times that people did not know where their family members were. People, when they were moved from the fairgrounds to San Andreas to down to Valley Springs, they just told them to get on a bus with my sons over here, my daughters. They were split up, young children. So I think this money needs to go towards OES to get that stable, and we're prepared when we go forward with it.
I don't question, I was at the fire too, I know the chaos. I'm thinking, what is the one-time expense? Because we did set aside money. We did our capital improvements plan where we talked about where we were going to put OES, where they're going to be housed, and that hasn't been resolved, obviously. So what is the one-time investment we're making?
Communication systems, computer systems, whatever she needs to set up the center.
And there's no source of other funds for this?
Well, this is
So if we don't give you money on
recovery
this,
funds.
we don't have an OES site?
Good
Or do
morning.
we have an ongoing line item in our budget already for your programs?
So from my understanding, I do understand that the Emergency Operations Center is on a CIP list. I am unaware of what the funding source for that is. It is currently
$2
not
million.
in my
We're looking at these projects overall.
So for an EOC specifically, or just
It was part of
for
it.
these? Okay. So the discussion about, the function of an EOC, I went into at length on March 19th during that study session. We need a space that can function during the event, before the event, and through the duration of the recovery period of that event. Currently, we don't have a space that's accessible to the people that need to be there to do the functions that Supervisor Tofinelli was talking about as far as communication is concerned, as far as mass care and sheltering is concerned. All of the different emergency support functions have a role in that space and need a space to coordinate and to communicate. It's just as important as having the actual infrastructure there. You need the stuff and you need the space.
So how did you possibly come up with 850,000? Where's that from?
Well, it was during conversation with Supervisor Tofinelli. He approached me about a proposal, and I said, I can do a lot with
I'm just thinking because we just did this in the CIP for physical space.
We did this in the CIP, but it had nothing to do with stocking it and making it usable. It had nothing to do with that. We need to be able to make it functional and usable so she can use it. We can build the building, but if it's not, okay, there's the building. You're going to need funds to set it up and get it going and moving.
And you have no funds for that?
I mean, currently in my budget for this current year and for the upcoming year, I have set aside funds, but since there hasn't been a physical space to then invest in the funds, I've not spent those
Okay,
dollars.
so you have the funds, but we have not spent them because you do not have physical space.
Correct.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, and that goes to the point is that you need to be standalone from where a Type 1 team is located. You need to be standalone from where the sheriff's dispatch system is located. You're in a whole different realm of how you're supporting all of that, but although you need the space, you also need the equipment to operate within the space. And that means all of the computers and the communication systems, et cetera, and a phone bank that's dedicated, and that it will go on long after the disaster's over. And so that space is going to be continually used, literally weeks, months, and almost years later. So we can't just talk about this as a space. We have to talk about it as what other support equipment that you have to have on a long-term basis to make it successful.
Supervisor Mills, she just told us she has the money, she just doesn't have the space. You have the money
Well,
for the equipment.
It depends on what the space looks like. I can do a lot, I can, be negotiable about the stuff that goes into the space.
Thank you,
Let's
Ms.
just go through
Keller.
questions and see if we get the public.
The money is general fund. So the two sources of funding for OES is general fund or Homeland Security money. The Homeland Security grants are very specific to particular things that she would buy. So if she doesn't expend those funds, then there is no grant reimbursement. The money that is in the OES budget is from the general fund. So once it's not spent, goes into cash carry, you guys reappropriate it for 1920. The CIP, I believe that also was coming from specifically the general fund. So again, June 30th comes along, goes into the cash carry, it can be reappropriated. But it's not, the earmarking of it basically ceases as of June 30th.
Well, I was referring to the remodel. Okay, questions?
It's general fund.
It's general fund, some of it's teeter funds, it's different areas, but it is general fund dollars.
Yes.
Okay. Who wants, other questions, or how many people want to keep this on the list?
I'm in favor of it.
Supervisor Stopper? Let me change up the order a little bit once in a while, guys.
I do not want this.
I do not want this either. Supervisor Mills, changing up the order.
I'm in agreement.
Agreement with us or in agreement
No,
with Gary?
With
She's in
Supervisor,
agreement with me.
with Supervisor Toffenali, I think that it needs to be part of the discussion.
Supervisor Stopper?
It's something that needs to be addressed, but I don't think this needs to be a line item here. And I'm gonna go on to say that we just put together an ad hoc committee for people to follow through with the CIP program. So that's where that work needs to get done.
Okay. All right, thank you. That'll stay on the list. What we'll do, Chris, I assume that's a spreadsheet? I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry. Krista, I'm assuming that's a spreadsheet?
That's actually a screenshot. Dropped
Okay,
into
do you have,
PowerPoint.
I've got the spreadsheet with the formulas in there. I think what we're going to do is we're going to move to public comment. I'd like to get the spreadsheet up, input these 4 things. Then we'll start doing in real-time math up on the screen. Can we do that? We're probably going to have through lunch hour, because we're probably not going to get through public comment before we break for lunch. But when we come back from lunch, can we put that together? Just the list.
Chair, 5 at a time up there, 5 at a time.
Excuse me, folks, 5 at a time. We're going to have 3 minutes to talk. We will go until everybody's too hungry to sit. We probably will not get through everybody. We will return after lunch with a spreadsheet where we'll do that in public. I don't think you guys want us taking a spreadsheet in the back room at lunch and coming back and tell you what we did. Unless you do. All right, first speaker, Mr. Childress. And if you could all, happy hands, thumbs down, but no shouting, please.
Thank you. I apologize for interrupting the public comment period earlier. Probably if I attended more regularly, I would know how it worked. Just a few comments about the disbursement of the Butte Fire funds. I think in general, because the damage occurred primarily in District 2, the lion's share of the funds should remain in District 2 and be used for many purposes. I was not evacuated during a fire. My son had to come in across the roadblock at the end of Jesus Maria to tell me it was time to get out, even though the fire station was only 1.5 miles from my house. I could obviously see the ashes falling, and I maybe should have gotten out sooner. But in the allocation for the roads in District 2, in particular Jesus Maria Road, I hope people have, all of the supervisors has driven that road lately. It's in dire need of repair. It's really unsafe. They're washed out sections. But as part of that, I'm hoping that some of the funds are also allocated for dealing with the hazardous trees. We've had to pay lots of money to have trees that have died because of the fire all around our house. I'm not suggesting that funds be spent for private people to use. We've done that responsibly, but we've also had our property logged, 80% of it was burned, even though the fire did not destroy our house for some reason. Since we've had it logged, we didn't get anything from the logging. We broke even. We've had lots of invasive weeds come in, star thistle, that we never had before. We're having to deal with. I would like to say that I think those cell phone improvements and emergency communication improvements are important, very important across the county. It just seems like such a major expense at this time that it would take too much out of the settlement funds to take care of that. I think that possibly we could look with a better magnifying glass at the needs in each of these districts. Allocating $200,000 to each of the fire station districts just sounds even, it sounds fair, but I don't think the needs are equal. And I think that amounts could be adjusted according to the actual needs of each location. And in all due fairness to Supervisor Tofinelli, I don't think the inadequacies of the Jenny Lind facilities were due directly to the Butte fire. I mean, there's definitely maybe a need there, but I don't think these funds should be used for those purposes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Childress.
Thank you.
Mike?
Mike Falvey, District 2. Number one, right off the top of my head, you guys are losing sight of this argument here, pro and con. You didn't win the lottery. They didn't come and say, here's $22 million to spend as you wish. In actuality, they did, but I said this before at the previous meeting, if it was causing districts, whatever district you name it, that's where the funds should be set to get that district back where it needs to be. I agree generally with Supervisor Garamendi's proposition. The $5 million in reserve account for, quote, future unforeseen expenses, unquote. Is that maybe to pay off a cannabis lawsuit? I mean, what are these unforeseen? I'm a taxpayer. I don't want to pay off a cannabis lawsuit, you know, with funds we got that are supposed to repair damages that we were entitled to be repaid for. That's just one example. And I believe that's going to be coming down the pike, the damages from that lawsuit. So if a penny of mine went for that, or a penny of the counties went for that, that would not be good. If these roads aren't fixed in the very near future, I've lived in District 2 for 40 plus years, and I'll tell you something, surprise gentlemen and ladies, they will not be fixed. We'll have 40 years of cold patch and 40 years of culverts going bad, 40 years of shoulders going bad, minimal repair by a guy driving down the road with a shovel and some asphalt. We need to get them back in shape. I don't want to put money in the bank and have it sit there, again, I hate to harp on this, but to pay off lawsuit money. The $5.3 million is not enough for the roads. And with that in mind, I also think that the majority of the work should be farmed out to professional road companies, road building companies. This is too big a project for the county, although they're good workers, I have respect for them, but we need to get guys in, get it done, and move on. But $5 million, again, in a reserve account, no. Sorry. And I think you guys are losing touch with reality here, because you're all going willy-nilly with all these ideas. Communications are great, emergency services are great, OES is great, but this money came from Pacific Gas and Electric as a settlement for the damages that were caused in District 2, 99% of. Please keep that in mind.
Okay, once again, people, happy hands. I know, we're all learning, it's a new world.
Somebody stepped on him, so I apologize for the yip.
Sorry, guys.
Diane Lawley, District 2, lost my home, lost my property. But I was prepared. I had insurance. Yes, I got some PG&E settlement for things that the insurance didn't cover, so I'm okay. And in listening to you and everyone else, I have suddenly come up with some more things, and it's like, okay, you got all this money. It's not Christmas. We had a fire. I know preparedness. I had insurance. And I'm not going to go through my list, but I am going to say, when I went to PG&E and asked for X amount of dollars, I did my research, just like you gentlemen and everybody that's involved in the county did. I knew what it was going to cost to take down those trees. I knew what it was going to cost to burn them. I knew my new driveway was going to cost, my fences, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't understand what's really going on here. However, I think whatever you presented to PG&E, that what you needed and what they agreed to, for me, it was spot on. So I'm hoping that they also were spot on with you folks. And so what you got for it, the money, spend it for that. Clean us up, fix us. And yes, I will, to the sheriff, we do need the radios up here. We have new deputies, and to think that they're not able to be out there and do their jobs is a little freaky. I recently lost a cell phone, and they sent an officer out to help me find it. It was so nice to have, and I mean, I'm an older woman, and in the dark, and I'm sorry I lost it. Well, it slid down between the seats, and I couldn't find it, and couldn't make a phone call, and to have anybody call me. And it was really nice to have this nice young deputy show up and say, hey, I can help you. Other than that, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Come on down.
Thank you, Board, for hearing me today. My name is James Sullivan. I live in Valley Springs. I am one of the directors for the Jenny Lynn Veterans Memorial District. I was there for the Butte Fire in the old building. We had some huge problems that we were not able to overcome because of the lack of communication within the county. People would come to us saying, hey, where's my kid? Or where's my wife? Where's my son? You know, where's my animals? My wife did work with the animals over here at the county area here where they were stored. Everybody pulled in. I've never seen this community ever come together as tight as I saw during that time. I mean, everybody was tight with each other. We were set there at Jenny Lynn, and we were supposed to work with the Red Cross. We had health and services come down, and we worked the best we could because people would come by, hey, I'm going to go to Costco, what do you need? They'd show up with pallets of water. The thing that we did, because there was no OES, we went ahead and took what the people were giving us and issued it out to where it was needed. We made the conversations with the people, with the churches and stuff, and got them stuff. That way there, we took a little bit of help there. But that's what we're for. That's what the JLVMD is, the West Side County Evacuation Center. And the reason we are now asking for help with the new building is because the old building was bought and paid for back in 1960-something. The other problem we're having is it was built without the full funds intended. We, myself, Gary Tofinelli, Frank Garza here, we all pitched in, and we went and got a bank loan, and we did as much as we could with the loan money that we could get that we could afford. What couldn't be paid for, I myself spent 2 years every weekend for free up at the that's all, fixing up stuff for handicap accesses throughout the area right there. And we have now expanded threefold. We have tent camping that can be done up at the baseball fields. We have RV parking areas where the RVs can park for a hazard. Any basic condition, if we're given this money, we will be able to fulfill that the county needs. And since we're so far out this way, we're the closest thing to the outbound area to get out of the county. So we're the last stand. But we need to be prepared to be the last stand. Red Cross will be issuing us some cots and stuff that we will be storing. And we're going to store them inside our new building, and they'll all be marked. And whatever needs to be done will be done. We have directors on call 24/7. So there's always one member of the directors that's ready to meet any situation. That's all. Thank you.
Sir. Next speaker.
board members, constituents of the county. My name's Frank Garza, I'm General Manager of Jenny Lynn Veterans District. During the Butte fire, I volunteered from day 2 till about a month and a half afterwards. I reported to San Andreas Town Hall and started receiving people in wheelchairs, in being brought in on stretchers, and stayed there for a couple of days. Then we evacuated those folks from there to Frogtown, then had to evacuate them from Frogtown back
Frank,
to San Andreas.
You gotta speak
I'm
to us.
sorry.
Okay.
And then from San Andreas, we had to evacuate them to Jenny Lynn's Veteran Memorial District and to Good Samaritan Church. Frogtown was taken over by CAL FIRE, all the other fire departments that were coming in to fight the fire. So Frogtown is not always available to evacuees during emergencies. According to OES, when they took over Jenny Lynn Veterans Hall, we were the last stop before everybody had to be evacuated to San Joaquin County, because we were the last shelter, recognized shelter. Glory Bound Church, Tent City. How many evacuees that are wheelchair bound, invalid, need medical assistance can live in a tent city when it gets rainy, when it gets wet? The allocated funds that we're asking, whether we get the amount Mr. Tofanelli proposed or not, are going to be to improve our existing facility. We would like to install a generator and a transfer switch so when PG&E or whoever takes over decides to turn off the power, we will be self-supporting. We can have power for the people that need medical assistance in there. We can have lights for those that need medication so that we can have power for the people that are on oxygen. We also want to use some of those funds to turn one of the existing bathrooms into a shower so that when we ever have evacuees, they can shower there, so that the people that need medical assistance don't have to be put on a little bus and taken anywhere else for showers. Our 2 softball fields can be used to park RVs along with the parking lot up there, or we can house large animals up there. We are one of the 4 largest facilities recognized by the American Red Cross as a shelter in this county. We are also in the process of getting surveyed by the American Red Cross in the next week or 2. And in June, we are going to start conducting training exercises with CAL FIRE and the American Red Cross. If you decide, and we hope you do, decide to allocate
very much,
funds,
Frank.
we're going to improve our facility.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Ms. Sharp?
Hi, my name is Shannon Sharp. This is my daughter Anastasia. We're homeschoolers. This is a great civics lesson today. I want to thank the current Board of Supervisors and those in the past who have taken the steps to encourage people in our county who have been through this. District 2 has been through hell. Yes, there have been other fires. Yes, there will be other fires. My husband lost his wood shop in the fire. Another home that we built on 180 acres. It's been in our family since 1950. We've been living here for 16 years. I'm also currently the Mountain Ranch Community, 4-H Community Club leader. So we have families in our club with young children and so on that have been impacted. When I saw that there was this meeting today, I said, I need to come and speak up. For every time that I drive up and down Whiskey Slide Road, which is where we live, keeping in mind that the 2 thoroughfare roads that were used and impacted deeply, Jesus Maria and Whiskey Slide, are the only in and outlets to other parts of the county. I drive them more than daily. I'm surprised there aren't ruts in the road just from my car, but I would reiterate the burned trees that are coming down constantly, the mudslides, the erosion, the lack of shoulders because of trees that were fallen, haven't been cleaned up. They're just sitting there like waiting campfires. And in addition, I have young drivers, and if one of those trees falls on my children, injures them or kills them, there will be hell to pay. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. We also received money from PG&E. I'm very grateful for it. I think of it in order of recovery, repair, and then prepare. Keep that in mind as you prioritize these funds. Recovery. I'm not going to insult people with things. I know how hard it is to make the decisions when you get a lump sum of money, but you have to think of how do we recover first, then how do we repair what is in disrepair, and then we prepare. And those roads, and yes, communication, I'm not sure about all the high band, low band, or whatever. Put some damn cell towers out there so our phones work, because it was people calling people, helping people. And yes, I hope that we get better communication for our police and so on, but the people need to be able to communicate as well. In addition, I just ask that you consider the funds for the fire departments and so on. I was looking at those numbers. I didn't see the numbers before I came here. I just came to say, please keep in mind those priorities. But fire departments, they need more. There were not people there that should have been there, and they need their people and their equipment. I appreciate so much the town hall people that also serve the people that were, please support the, I got so nervous, I'm sorry, support the evacuation centers, and thank you to the
Thank you, Ms. Sharp.
the
Appreciate
county
it.
fairgrounds.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. And this is a heck of a civics lesson today. Arturo?
My name is Arturo Salazar. I am a resident of District 2. Like a lot of residents of District 2, I went through hell through the Butte fire, and we are still recovering. I'm not going to bother anybody with the details. But what I'd like to start with is reminding you of the words that Supervisor Callaway made just a few moments ago. We are here because of the Butte fire. We receive compensation from PG&E to repair the damages caused by the Butte fire. I am familiar with communication infrastructure systems for public systems. I have volunteered in San Francisco. I have volunteered enough to understand them. I know we need them. Has nothing to do with the Butte fire. Yes, the communications failed. Of course they failed. It's part of what fails in the fire. Frogtown sewer system is in bad need of repair, and yes, it needs to be repaired. And yes, it might have been uncovered by the Butte fire. However, that's not what PG&E gave us the money for. PG&E gave us the money to repair the damages caused by the Butte fire, and there is plenty of damages caused by the Butte fire. Last time, I applauded Supervisor Garamendi's proposal, which, in my opinion, correctly allocated the vast amount of money for repairs of the roads that are an essential part of compensation for the damage, and address the issue of the lawsuit. I do not believe that you put a non-privilege to the original demand made of PG&E, but I do not believe in that demand. There was, our communications infrastructure is terrible and we need to repair it, because that was not something that was caused by the Butte fire. The communication infrastructure problems that we're experiencing are the results of decades of neglect, not the Butte fire. The same thing can be said about the sewer system in Frogtown. It's the result of decades of neglect and lack of maintenance. I appreciate the need to do those things. I truly do. But I do not believe that's what this money is for. It's not a Christmas gift. It's not manna from heaven. It is money that we receive from PG&E for the purposes of repairing the damages caused by the Butte fire, and that should be the only thing that is priority. Everything else should be secondary. Yes, there are important secondary things.
Thank you very much, Arturo.
Thank you.
Fellow board members, we will continue public comment to 12:30, then we'll break till 2, so we can do the spreadsheet. Supervisor Linsky. Board Chair recognizes former Supervisor Steve Linsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just welcome back, Manny. I just don't get how you keep coming back for this, but I also don't envy the choices you have, because the truth is, there's not enough money to cover all the things we haven't done over these years, let alone the impact of the Butte fire. So I haven't heard a single thing today that's not a legitimate project or concern, but I do have some opinions about priorities, and I'd like to share them. I'm pleased to see the fire departments get county attention. That's a good thing. I'm pleased to see roads get some attention, and also the resiliency projects. But District 2, there was a reference earlier by one supervisor about a black hole in communications. True enough. In fact, a lot of that is in District 2. But District 2 is a black hole. We've lost our economy. We've lost a good portion of our revenues for fire departments that are dependent on property taxes. Our roads are washed out. Our electricity goes on and off. We are sitting in a third world situation. While people talk about institutional needs, we have recovery issues yet before us. This fire keeps on giving us pain. And the moment that we get a little bit of money, there's going to be a whole lot of grabs on it. But the truth of the matter is our district is in serious trouble. I'd like to go over just a couple of things. Central Fire, which had 12 people lose their homes while they were fighting the fire, 12 of their volunteers, has lost a good part of its tax base. Railroad Flat School has lost half of the attendance at it, and once again threatened with closure. We have people, and this is my biggest concern, that are living still on dead-end roads with the winds going uphill and the roads going uphill and dead-ending. That's how a lot of people in Paradise lost their lives. We have remedies, even road remedies, that are not on your list that could actually save lives. We don't need to, truthfully, at this moment, we don't need to be doing new but needed projects after deferring our work for decades. What we need is to restore some semblance of normalcy in a place that has been completely disrupted by that fire, and perhaps subsequent board decisions on other matters. Tuolumne County had a big fire, the Rim Fire, and they made some decisions about short-term, oh, geez.
I'm sorry, Sarah. Sorry, Steve. Steve.
Think about the forest, think about its conditions. It's not even on your list. We're going to burn again soon enough.
Thank you,
Do
Steve.
something about it.
Yes, sir.
I do want to say, Supervisor Walensky, about District 2, you do shovel your own snow. Just,
Unlike certain other districts which need lots of service.
We fill our own potholes sometimes, too. Bonnie?
Couple of questions and maybe some comments. Did we expect more money from PG&E? I mean, were we expecting a lot more than $20 million? Because to me, it does not seem enough to repair the damage that has been done. I think all districts would like to benefit in some way or other, and I've heard a lot of comment about ongoing projects that have been neglected for years. What district or districts were actually affected by the Butte fire? We know District 2 suffered immensely. Did the San Andreas area suffer? Did other places suffer? Is it all focused on District 2? Because I think that's where the money needs to go to do the repairs that have occurred because of the fire. And I heard people saying, well, you know, we want to build up Jenny Lind District, and those are all good ideas, but let me see what my comment was. If the money wasn't, if the districts and the projects were not affected by the Butte fire, I think they take a back seat to repairing what has been damaged. And I would suggest that the Board of Supervisors set up goals for all the projects that you've mentioned that need to be addressed, like all the Jenny Lynn District and the Frogtown, as goals to be achieved by attracting more grants, cutting funding in areas that are maybe not as important as having the resources available to support the overload of refugees from the fire areas. And I just think we're looking at this money as like a cash cow that we all might benefit from, but I think we need to focus on PG&E could have given us $50 million, but they're bankrupt, or so they're saying. And if they did, I bet you $50 million wouldn't even be enough to repair the roads, the culverts that I'm hearing about, the falling trees, the people that have lost everything, that didn't have any insurance, because insurance companies don't want to insure the people that live out in the hills. So I think we're missing the point of what the Butte Fire funding from PG&E is for. Thank you.
Terry?
Good afternoon, Terry, or morning, good afternoon. Terry McBride, Mountain Ranch. Our community was practically wiped out. And in so many ways. And the road issues, I want to bring to your mind, what's it going to be like an ambulance driving down the road trying to dodge those potholes? Oh, and the falling trees, trying to go save somebody's life. That's what our Central Fire is dealing with all the time. And that's what local ambulance companies are dealing with all the time. And I'm talking potholes. I'm waiting for a bike to disappear right in front of me. It's going to happen. You complain about how much money you have lost in taxes. Well, apparently the assessor's office has decided to incrementally raise all of our property values because dead trees are apparently worth more than live ones. So our land values have all shot through the roof, even though we don't have a house or any living, beautiful trees on them anymore. So you've got some money coming in that way. And then another thing on that tax, well, you know what? If you hadn't have passed the ban, you'd have plenty of money. There wouldn't be an issue now, would there? You didn't think about the rest of the county. You took about your little districts and their little attitudes. Some of them, not all of them, a lot of them are my friends who I'm going to ask not to vote for you next time around, especially after this. You have some good ideas, but when a pot of money comes along, it's like, oh, mine. I asked each one of you to drive our roads. How many of you did it? Raise your hand. Thank you, Marita. Thank you, Ben. Why am I not surprised? Yeah, it's really easy to take that money and stick it elsewhere. Those are valid concerns. Why aren't we going for grants? Why aren't permits fees being waived for those organizations that you're trying to upgrade? Why not bring in us volunteers? I know how to swing a hammer. I'm not really sure what I'm swinging it at, but I'll work. So will most folks. You can pull in the volunteers. This is a county that gives to this county and gives to the people that live here. We love it. We will take care of our own. But help. But don't be swiping all that money because now all of a sudden you got this nice big pot. I understand what Marita's saying. They're valid. But there are ways to work around it, and I guarantee you there are grants. So I'd like you to think about that. But absolutely true, this money is for Butte. And unless you went through what we went through, and many of us are still. I live in a camping trailer. I sleep on a mattress this thick on a folding bed. Sucks. Tired of it. I don't got any money from PG&E, not a dime. I don't know if I will. But we got the money to repair the roads, to make our county a little safer up there, and hopefully we've got the intelligence to waive that stupid ban and get some economy going and get tax revenue back into this county. Thank you.
Happy hands. Neil?
Hello, Neil McEwen. The Butte Fire burn scar lies solely in District 2, and that is where the settlement funds need to end up. The proposed public works road improvements consist of repaving, resurfacing, and culvert maintenance. There will be money distributed to the fire departments across the county, which makes good sense. I recently reviewed the PG&E presentation regarding public safety power shutoffs, which occurred 2 days before the fire in Paradise. The VP, Aaron Johnson, acknowledged red flag warnings, yet they didn't shut the power off. My wife and I reached a signed settlement in November with the utility, but they never wrote the check. The county also reached a settlement with the utility. The county wasted $1 million by not keeping track of hours. The county is paying itself $573,000 for lost tax revenue. Governor Newsom just backfilled property taxes for 3 years to Butte and Lake counties. Why are we having to use settlement funds instead of seeking equal restitution from the state? Supervisor Garamendi, while talking with Aaron Johnson, you brought up the topic of broadband using the grid. It is well known the internet connectivity in Copperopolis is of such high quality that NASA scientists can work from home. The same cannot be said for D2. I've learned not to hope so much after the past few years, but I've been holding out hope that part of the lousy $25 million settlement out of an original $169 million in estimated costs included at least an assurance the utility would provide high-speed internet to our devastated district. The roads aren't even going to be improved, just refreshed. Is this going to lead to a more prosperous district and enable us to rebound? Certainly the sewer extension from the fairgrounds to the Angels Treatment Plant stands to spur significant future growth for a select group of property owners and developers. If this project is funded, please ensure that the funds are repaid to the settlement account by way of development fees. Angels Camp will likely annex any new development along the southern 49 corridor. At least 40% of all new planned unit developments must meet the needs of not only low-income households, but for very low and extremely low households as well. Many of the citizens in these categories are fire survivors as well, lest we forget. We are in desperate need of immediate leadership. There are a multitude of problems that require immediate attention so that all the survivors can recover. We need to determine what can be done to promote economic prosperity in D2. Retirement communities have their place in this county, but so do the farmers that drive the economy.
Ms. Mills?
Well, I'm Jodine Mills, and I've lived in this county all but 9 years of my life. I've spent the last 19 years in Mountain Ranch, and I currently reside there. I'm a real estate broker. I have JPM Realty in McCollum Hill, so I kind of look at what's happened to our county from different sets of point of view. I want to remind all of you guys where the burn took place. When you look at this map of the districts, you can see where it is. It's District 2. I mean, we all know that. And I think to take the funds that were given to us to recover from this devastation and to spend them on things that, although they're good ideas, are not relevant to what's at hand. The county did not win the lottery by receiving those $20 million. It's there to help restore the lives of those of us that have chosen to stay behind. Our property values are declining. A lot of it has to do, of course, with losing the forests, losing our neighbors and family members who've lost houses. A lot of families have moved out of the area. But when you're talking about replacing lost revenue, why aren't you thinking about the real problem? Rebuilding the area to gain the revenue back by new houses, by new families, by new lives being created in the area that was so devastated by this fire. I don't want the Board of Supervisors to be short-sighted. You all have good intentions, but the communications with the Sheriff's Department have been a problem forever. That money should not come from these proceeds. That's not the purpose of these funds. And I understand, yes, the fair does need a proper sewer system, but that itself has been a problem for decades. That's not something that resulted from the Butte fire or the use of that facility as an evacuation center. That was ongoing. We need to take these monies, We need to rebuild an area that is ignored enough in our county. I mean, for a lot of you, when the Butte fire was something until the smoke cleared. It keeps going for those of us that live there. Every day we drive up and we see the devastation that was left behind. I see the roads that are rubble. And to give us $5 million, Supervisor Toffanelli, that might fix Mountain Ranch Road and Railroad Flat Road, but you really should get out more. Thank you.
Board recognizes Planning Commissioner Laddish.
I am not here as a planning commissioner. I'm here as a resident of Sheep Ranch and a volunteer for Central Fire. September 11th, well, that's a date that should loom large both in national and Calaveras County history, security, and preparedness. On September 11th, 2015, I was staffing a water tender down on Old Gulch Road, keeping water supply to the engines that were fighting the Butte fire. And the word that went along the line that morning was that the fire was getting past us, it was heading to Sheep Ranch, it would overrun Sheep Ranch and would be in Arnold by 7 o'clock that night. It never got to Arnold. It never got through Sheep Ranch. And why? Because the Sheep Ranch Fire Station, this little building with a nice big field next to it, was hosting 30 to 35 units of firefighting equipment and their staffs. And they were towing the line and holding back the Butte fire, along with lots of other assistance, bulldozers and aircraft support and this sort of thing. But those people were there and doing remarkable, heroic work. They were doing it without adequate support. When the community of Sheep Ranch built its fire station in the early 70s, we have one toilet, no showers, of course no washers or dryers. We weren't considering having that many units there, but it turns out, as it did in the Old Gulch fire in 1992, as well as in the Butte fire, that Sheep Ranch is in a strategic position to serve as a command center. And it has served admirably as that, but it needs more assistance. We ran out of power. I wasn't there at the time. I was off fighting the fire somewhere else. They ran out of power. They ran out of water. They ran out of water in the Butte fire. And I very much appreciate Supervisor Mills' concern about this very fact. And I would like to say that the next September 11th, this county has to experience, that everybody here feels that they have done the right thing to make sure that we're not going to run out of water in key places like Sheep Ranch. We're going to provide
Thank you, Tim.
appropriate support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to break at 12:30. We've got about 9 minutes. We got about 3 more groups that can speak. 6 speak. I think we're so. Figure out. Lori, you're up.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Giannini, and I am the CEO at the Calaveras County Fairgrounds. And first thing I want to say is District 2, they're my people. And, you know, so I get what they're saying completely. However, I want to remind everyone that when the county went into litigation with PG&E, we were part of it because we were in the lawsuit, because we were an extension of county services. And yes, the infrastructure at the fairground is like all our roads. It's bad. I mean, it has been bad. The sewer is bad. However, we weren't able to service our community like we needed to. We did have CAL FIRE there. We also had 300 evacuees after Red Cross left. So just to say that We appreciate, all the issues here. We appreciate the feelings and the emotion, but we just need to do what's best. And yes, it was District 2, and I'm District 2 and 1 actually, and but it was all the other people who served District 2 so faithfully. And I said it at the last time I spoke at this meeting, we're so divisive sometimes, and I don't really understand that, but when it came to an emergency, we weren't at all. We just cared about each other. It didn't matter where you lived. It mattered if you had a pair of socks you could give someone, if you had a toothbrush. And I think, yes, we need to repair District 2. We need to make sure our infrastructure is in place for the next disaster, but we also need to quit being so divisive towards each other. So, again, the Calaveras County Fairgrounds is a county facility. It's everyone's facility. And during the Butte Fire, we served District 2, but it was all the other districts who did that with us. So thank you for your time.
Jeff? Hi there, I'm Jeff Peckler, resident of District 2, live in McComb Hill. I was evacuated by the Butte Fire and lost some goods in my refrigerator and freezer, but that was an inconvenience. The real damage was done, to the rest of the citizens who were there, lost homes and property, et cetera. I think that, as many people have said, you've sort of lost your focus. And I think one way to maybe go back to regaining that focus could be to actually look at the litigated settlement. You litigated based on damages that you claimed, and you received a settlement based on those damages. I echo Shannon Sharp, who spoke earlier. First recover, then repair, finally prepare. It's laudable that you guys are trying to look to the future and want to think ahead and see what can we do to be better off at the next big event, because there is a big event coming, whether it's mud or flood or fire, who knows. But first we have to fix what we have broken, and we have to, I think, abide by the terms of the settlement. We pitched, this is our problem, they compensated us for it. Let's do that first. That's it. Thank you. Mr. Cook, Chief.
Jeff Stone, the Fire Chief for Central Calaveras Fire. Central Calaveras Fire protects Mountain Ranch, Railroad Flat, and Glencoe. We also protect the areas of Swiss Ranch Road and Sheep Ranch, which are county protected areas through a contract with the county. I wanted to talk about water supply, trees, but I am very concerned about the proposal to significantly reduce the allocation for roads. This will not help District 2 recover. And I want to use just a very recent example that I'm hoping will make this point. Every year we have to have what's called a bit inspection on our fire apparatus. And so a mechanic has to come out and they basically have to certify that it's roadworthy. This last Friday, on our bit inspection of our primary Type 1 structure pumper, it was put out of service permanently because the frame is cracked. Now, the engine is 30 plus years old, so I don't know if the roads that I'm trying to drive that engine on impacted that, but I can't help but think that it's a significant part of it. And so, we have to increase the funding that goes to roads. I drove down Warden Road the other day. Warden Road, before the fire, was a paved road. It was one lane, but it was a paved road. It is now a dirt road. The pavement is completely gone. The reason that I was driving down Warden Road is we have a water tank out there that protects that area. I was called to go out there. A tree fell on our water tank. So that water tank is now out of service. And I am 1 month before fire season. So I don't know what I'm going to have to do to repair that water truck, but I'm probably going to have to get some equipment in there. I'm not positive I can even do that in the condition that Warden Road is in. So the amount that we're spending on roads has to be increased. That's the first thing. I do have to go back and touch on some of the other things under the proposal. Originally, Supervisor Garamendi's initial proposal was going to allocate $250,000.
Chief, when we get back to the points, we'll probably dig into that, those line items, but thank you very much for the public comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Cook, you be our last speaker for lunch.
Sam Cook, Director of Central Calaveras Fire, member of Mountain Ranch Community, 28 years. Okay, I affirm what Chief Stone has said about the roads. And we're not talking about just fire, we're talking about medical emergencies also. Most of our service up there are medical calls. Now, we send a rescue, a type 3 out on a medical call with a staff of 2 or 3, and then we have an ambulance coming up from San Andreas. They're all getting beat to death on those roads, okay? The delay time is longer now because the roads are bad, and there may be some people who are suffering cardiac problems who are not going to make it because of that. We really need the roads. The other thing we need is water. Now, I was instrumental 20 years ago in getting a redwood water tank from CCWD and being able to put 2 hydrants in Mountain Ranch, which helped save that town until they ran out of water. We now have a gen set for it to put in when we have the funds to put it in, okay? But we need more water structures, replace the one on Warden Road, put one out at Sheep Ranch, because the wharf hydrants from CCWD would take forever to fill the tanker. Okay. Central Calaveras County, Mountain Ranch area is a key area for the whole county for support. Like Mr. Laddie said, it's a good location for an IC. Now, usually when there's a disaster here in the county, CAL FIRE comes in and kind of takes over Frogtown. But they have their own facilities, their own mess halls, their own showers, their own porta potties, their own water tenders. They don't really impact that. I got kicked out of there and back to San Andreas Hall and then down to Valley Springs the day of the evacuation. And I wasn't aware, other than the trailers down there, that people were staying there. I'm glad they were able to accommodate 300 some odd people. But anyway, I like to see the funds stay in District 2, although I applaud Mr. Garabendi's idea of $200,000 to the fire districts. I'd like to see $300,000 so each district that's not in District 2 can go out and buy another Type 3 or a Type 6 engine to support the rest of the county. Because the way the funding for the fire departments is now, they can't afford to do it. So think about that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and with that, we will break for lunch. We'll be returning at 2 o'clock to continue the show. Hour and a half.